Sit over here. I'm not afraid of you.
All right, Mike, we advertise it as a meeting, so we have to open it up. So call the meeting to order. Ask everybody to stand for the pledge. Chief Stewart, will you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I want to emphasize there is no side here. This is working together.
I thought you joined us. I'm sorry.
Yeah. We need to do our roll call. Listen.
Bonnie Donaldson. Here. Sue Mayberry. Here. Eric Whittington. Here. Dan Bush Jr. Here. Danny Lush.
Here.
Scott Schwab. Here.
Alrighty. And with that said, we wanted to have this meeting and kind of like a work session. And what I did was, and we can do anything you want. So I'm just trying to keep us organized and keep us on task. So I printed off some agendas. First of all, with a mission statement, I'll pass those out to everybody. And I had, you just pass them that way, Mike? Yep, I'll go this way. And Captain Urian, you have, for the audience, I have more copies, but I thought we'd put it up on the board. Cliff, I don't know how that'll show up on it'll show up. It'll show up? Good. All right. We can, Chief, can you pass them out in the audience too if people want them? All right, this is uncharted territory. Never done it before, so this kind of comes from just my background in education, where we try to do, we call it collaborative negotiations, interest-based bargaining, whatever you want to call it. Just the idea is that we have to identify our mutual interest and our individual interests. So I threw some things out there. So first of all, I want to start with a mission statement to provide advanced life-saving service and fire protection to every citizen, business, and visitor in Lawrence Township in the city of Canal Fulton, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, with 4-person per shifts. These services must be provided with the utmost attention to be fiscally responsible with the precious resources given to us by the taxpayers of our communities. So if anybody wants to add anything to that or delete anything from it, just wanted to, kind of emphasize to us why we're all here, to serve our citizens, our community. So with that said, the options with the living together arrangement, I threw them out, and then I thought of another one, crazy one Mr. Cozy gave me that he heard of, and once again, we can add to that or delete any of those. So status quo is just basically staying right where we're at with the living together arrangement, and nothing changes. Status quo with adjustments would obviously involve some adjustments, and then you get into brainstorming ideas just to throw them up on the board, and we'll make Mr. Booker our chief scribe. So
You don't want to try and read my handwriting.
All right, 1 chief, 2 departments. I've heard that in the past. A fire district has obviously been a topic of discussion for years. Disbanding, going back to the way it was before, and that crazy one that I heard that some communities do where one entity, one municipality does the police service, the other municipality does the fire service. So, however, we do one and you do the other. And the concept of you'd have one police department that serves the entire city and Canal Fulton or township, and then you'd have one fire department that does the same thing, but they would be led by each individual municipality. I thought that was kind of a crazy idea, but some people make it work, but as I understand it, it's more well established. It's been that way for a long time, where it was just evolved that way.
Mayor, I don't think we can even do that with our charter.
Yeah. Yeah,
We can't, I don't think we can do that with our police department, per our charter.
yeah. So there's,
So, I mean,
there's a good example where that idea would get crossed off.
Well.
Okay, so we can't even write it on the board. So, thank you, sir. All right. And then I went on to, brainstorm, and what's important here is that the ideas we throw out are honest. And we really have to be honest about our concern. We don't want to walk away from this meeting, not sharing a concern or an interest that you have, and then, you're trying to backtrack about, trying to catch up to it. So that's where, when you brainstorm, you write ideas on the board, and then you go, after you're all done coming up with ideas, you go through those ideas and determine, is it a mutual interest, or is it just the township's interest, or is it just the city's interest? So, a good example of that would be, I guess, like a tanker, where we don't really need a tanker the way you would need a tanker to handle fires in rural areas. So, providing a tanker would be an interest to you and not so much an interest to us. So, and then I threw out, those are all just my ideas, and we can include them in the brainstorming, but really at this point, what I'd like to do is, ask you guys to go through that list and determine which one of these five, or that we just don't even want to consider. We just want to focus on, one of those five topics and brainstorm around it the way that, so that we can move forward better together. So, any thoughts on status quo? Just leaving everything the same? You would say everything's fine, nothing needs to be changed. So.
Mr. Mayor, if I can interrupt, first of all, I think we need to establish really why we're here. I mean, what really brought us to this table here. So I think that's what we need to talk about first. All these are all great topics. If we were working on a whole new way of whether we were gonna live together or status quo or whatever these other five are, I'd like to know why are we here and what brought us here. So I guess I would ask Chief Stewart if he would start with that, if I may.
Well, thank you, Mr. Loesch, and I will start, if that's okay with everybody else. I have some handouts that we can pass around here for everybody, and there might be some left over for the gallery.
Is this something we could copy and put up on the screen?
Sure, we could.
I did that wrong.
Yeah.
The rest of it. You're one of those guys, one for you and two for me?
Yeah.
You don't want a senior moment. Take it easy. Listen, you just.
So, I wanted an opportunity to address the meeting from January 3rd. I wanted an opportunity to address that to the council. Because, there was a lot of information that was talked about in that meeting. And I want to make sure that
Should be enough
all
to
of the
share.
information is being put out to the council and to the trustees. We did have the trustees and the fiscal officer watch the meeting. And so we sat down and addressed what we thought were the two biggest issues, but on the way to that, there was a few new council members that had asked for a little bit of history on how we got here. So I think besides Chief Podlager, I'm probably the senior man in the room and on both departments. That I've been here since 1990, and came here right after I got out of service. Lived here my whole life. Been in this community ever since 1974. So when I go through my history of what the department is, it's because I was there for every single part of this history. This is my walk through the Canal Fulton Morris Township Fire Department. So I joined the department in 1990, and this is on the first page there under the history. And at that time, the departments were not collaborating very well. They ran all of their own calls. It was one of those times when people talk about volunteers and cowboys, and running to actually take calls, and that's my call, not your call, you're doing it wrong. We did a lot of fighting at that point in time. But we started working together a little bit more because we started running into the necessity of manpower, because there wasn't a lot of manpower that was around as it was in the volunteer times in the 70s and 80s. People lived in Canal Fulton, worked in Canal Fulton. They worked at companies that would allow them to leave work to go run EMS and fire calls. When all that started going away, and we didn't have those people, they retired, they moved on, we started having problems with getting people to run calls. So around 1992, we started with our automatic aid on fire calls, and automatic aid for second squad calls, and automatic aid on accidents, so that both departments were getting called out at the same time to ensure that we had enough manpower to handle those calls. 1997, we started with the staffing. And when we started with the staffing, it was 2 people in the station, 12 hours a day, 5 days a week. So we still didn't have anybody on the weekends. But the way we worked that was when the tones went off, it went off for both departments, and we would go to the station where the call originated. So if it was a Lawrence Township call, everybody went to that station. If it was a Canal Fulton call, everybody went to that station. And then we still had volunteers in the area. We were, I was probably 22 years old, and Dan was probably 20. And, well, he's probably younger than that. But we had a lot of people around. We had, you were getting 8 to 10 people to come back for a callback. And as time moved on, that got worse and worse and worse. So we started to, over the years, we started to expand our staffing, expand our manpower, which you all have been brought up to speed with on the amendments that we made to our initial 1997 document. So fast forward up to April 1st, 2013. We were trying to fix a couple of problems. First problem was that we wanted to get all of our equipment that was usable in one facility. So specialty equipment was kept in 2 different places, like that tanker truck. So when Canal Fulton was on duty, the tanker truck was up at Lawrence Township. So if we had a fire that required a tanker in Lawrence Township at a residence, they had to go up there to get the truck. Or we had to depend on people to come in from home to get that truck. Or we had to depend on mutual aid. So we thought that by putting the people in one station, we would be better equipped to get 2 people in a pump, 1 person in the tanker, and we could get all that equipment on scene almost at the same time, which was good for the residents in the community. We also have water rescue equipment, some rope rescue equipment, ice rescue equipment. Those types of things were split between the departments, and they weren't all in one place. So we had to try and get those all in one place. The biggest portion of it, though, was our manpower issues. People were working 12 hours at Lawrence Township. They would pack up their stuff, pack up their gear, put everything in their car, drive to Canal Fulton. If they were working a double, which is a 24-hour shift, they would have to, or a 36-hour shift, they would have to pack it all up and move it, pack it up and move it, pack it up and move it. They were doing that 3 times in 36 hours, packing up their equipment and moving to another station. It's insanity. It just doesn't make any sense. It also gives us downtime in between the shift change. So you've got a 15 or 20 minute downtime between the time people are packing stuff up, putting in their car, moving it up to the other station, and then getting in play. So, in a nutshell, that's our history from 1990 as I can remember. So the problems that we were listening to from the January 3rd meeting, there was 2 specific grievances. And because I think that the one about the pay rates is going to be the biggest discussion, I figured I would just do the lesser of the 2 discussions, which is the hiring practices, which seem to be a sore point for people. When we moved in here in 2013, the members were allowed to join both departments. And a matter of fact, when we first put this thing together, we had our agreement of 1997. It said that Employees shall be persons currently employed by the village, the township, and North Lawrence Fire Department. Such additional employees shall be hired to perform the services specified in section 1 by each party as required, not mandatory, as required. So Chief Durkee made a comment that there was some people that he wouldn't have hired if he thought he didn't have to. And there were some folks that I didn't feel comfortable hiring, so instead of just hiring them, I asked a question. I asked the trustees, what do I do? I'm not comfortable with this individual. What do I do? And so we had a meeting with our legal counsel, and legal counsel reviewed the contract, reviewed the agreement, reviewed the language, and then also reviewed the Ohio Revised Code. And through that investigation, if you will, it was determined that, you know, no municipality can be mandated to hire any person under the ORC that they don't want to hire. And so my question is, directly at that, how many individuals did we not hire?
I can't answer that, I don't have a list.
Okay?
I don't know who's applied.
So my next question my next question was, did they meet the requirements? So since we can move past that one, the 18-year-olds. I have never said I won't hire 18-year-olds. I have hired 18-year-olds. We have hired them several times. My problem with it is that I don't want 18-year-olds on shift. And my insurance company doesn't want 18-year-olds driving our vehicles, and neither do the trustees. If they can't drive the vehicles, I can't put them on shift. And I have great experience with that, because early on in this living together agreement, we hired a whole bunch of 18-year-olds and put them on shift. And guess what? We couldn't run the calls. We couldn't get 2 crews out. When we have 4 people on right now that are all 21 years old and are all able to drive, we can run 2 calls at the same time. And if we have, the weekends was the hugest problem, the biggest problem. That if we had 1 paramedic on, 3 EMTs, 2 of them are 18, our ability to handle calls is next to nothing. So we made an adjustment. We made an agreement that we would try to stay away from hiring 18-year-olds and we would try to hire 21-year-olds. So then we moved into the grant process for the fire explorers, where they did the retention and recruitment grant. And that was to move people from the Explorer program into the fire service. Great idea. Captain Urian does a fantastic job of training them. When they come out, they have good skills, 0 experience. So, you know, when you're looking at, you know, being a high school kid that may have driven for 2 years in high school, to and from school, in a 1984 Honda Accord 2-door, and then we're going to take that application, and with very little experience and very little training, we're going to put them in charge of a $180,000 ambulance running lights and sirens to the hospital with a patient in the back, into an area they may not have ever been before. Akron City, City of Canton, where people are not watching us, and knowing that most of the times that we have accidents and we have deaths in the fire service, a lot of those are driving incidents. So we are trying to alleviate having those instances. We already did that partially when we got together and moved everybody into the stations. You don't see anybody driving around Canal Fulton in their personal vehicles with lights and sirens on their vehicles anymore. We took that away because that's a huge liability for the township and the city if they're driving lights and sirens in their personal vehicle, traveling through stoplights, and we have somebody who gets in an accident, we're all liable for that. So we made that change and took that away. I still believe that by limiting the age of the drivers, we at least get to the point where we can have maybe 5 years of experience of driving if that individual started driving at 16. We still have a training issue though, because I'm not aware of a driver's training program other than being checked off on the streets and being checked off to go to the hospitals. I'm not aware of a program that is being done that gets the driver out on the road for 40 hours for someone who's driving a vehicle that is very heavy compared to what they are used to, handles a whole lot differently. As you're driving, you know, one of the things that we tell people is that imagine that you have a hot cup of coffee sitting on the dashboard. Every time you jam on the brakes, that coffee falls in your lap. It's 10 times worse in the back. If you knock the coffee off of the dashboard, you've just thrown people out of their seats in the back of the truck. And if they're trying to start an IV, or if they're in a serious code or a serious situation where they need to be able to do their job, one of the things that gives us a little peace of mind is that we have people that have a little more driving experience to be able to run those calls and drive those vehicles. So when we're talking about how many people I haven't hired, or the individuals that I have not hired, the crew that was just hired by Canal Fulton from the Explorer program was told we would hire them, but they have to meet all of our criteria, which is another agreement that we had made with Chief Durkee, is that we would have people get a background check through BCI, and we would have them get a certified physical agility test from either Tri-C or Stark State. And we even put that into play. We had several people that we hired that did all that stuff. And then when we came to the group of younger folks, well, they didn't get that. So Chief Podlager pulled those folks into the office and said, look, we're not saying we won't hire you. We're saying that you have to meet the same criteria as the rest of the people that we have hired. So all you have left to do is to take a BCI or a physical agility test, go get it done, and we'll hire you. So day before yesterday, I finally got one from one of those individuals. But the rest of those individuals either haven't completed their school training yet, they're not ready to come on shift, or they have not completed their physical agility test. So I can't hire them because they don't meet the criteria to be hired at Orange Township Fire Department. Questions?
How many 18-year-olds are in our fire department right now, working? Would you say?
I know of one. Working.
Jackson Wendell.
Yeah.
One?
We have one that's doing his probationary orientation.
Okay. The agility tests, is the agility test not being performed as you require the older gentlemen that have been around longer, longer employees that are still not doing their agility test?
There's no one that hasn't.
There's no one that hasn't.
Right, that's hired by both departments, there's no
Right
one
now.
that hasn't done, right,
What did
correct.
you just get, you said the day before yesterday?
I got one from one of the young gentlemen that's 18 years old.
Okay, okay.
That was the last thing you had to get.
That was the last thing he had to get done.
And he is the single and 18-year-old that's in our group of firemen? He's the one that you're talking about?
He's the only one that has not been hired by Orange Township that hasn't met the criteria, yes.
Okay.
And we just haven't gotten to a point where we can hire him in a meeting yet, because I just got it the day before yesterday.
Well, personally, for me, when this was brought to council's attention about the 18-year-olds, I know I voted in favor of it. We all did not, but I did. However, I don't know when it was presented to us, and it may have been, and I missed it, but had I known that the township hasn't had an issue and wouldn't allow it versus us allowing it, that should have been a factor. I didn't know.
Well, he just told you that they hire 18-year-olds also.
But see, I didn't know that that was gonna cause a problem with
It shouldn't
the
cause a
mutual,
problem.
the
They-
mutual, I
you
just
have-
didn't realize
You
that.
have 18-year-olds employed now?
I just didn't realize that.
I have folks that are under 21 that are employed right now.
But they're
But
not
they don't drive.
driving,
They're not, no,
they're not driving. See, I wasn't aware that, I wasn't aware that it wasn't a mutual agreed upon thing where the 18-year-olds would be driving. I just didn't realize that
If
at
I-
the time.
If I may kind of go back to some of these
Okay.
things. One of the things about the 18-year-olds being hired by Canal Fulton Fire Department was I have a commitment and investment in our Fire Explorer program. And one of the things that I think I shared with council in the past was when these Fire Explorers would reach age 18, they would age out of the program. And so that these young people that we invested a lot of time in, we lost because the rule of not being able to put them to work until age 21. So we lost. They've gone to work for other departments. They've gone to work for Canton Township. They've gone to work for North Canton and Plain Township and things like that. So I was hoping to have a program where we could maintain these people, and they're using these other departments to drive vehicles and things like that. And let me reassure council again that once we hire them, they're not planning in that vehicle and go. The other thing is we've got two gentlemen that took the a driving course training to become a trainer that take these young people out and they take them driving according to the specifications of that course. They're certified to do that. So I just want to reassure council that this isn't something frivolous. This is something that we take serious, and I don't want to have that on my record that somebody's gotten injured because of.
Was one of them out training the other day, Chief?
I don't know if it was a young person. I don't
I
know.
thought it was a young person driving, a young lady driving a truck.
Yes.
Yeah,
But she's over 21.
She's over 21.
She's over 21.
But I do recall talking about that grant that we got and using some of the funding for the grant for more extensive vehicle driving as part of that grant. We had talked about that as well in this grant that you had presented that we did get. There may be funding for more extensive training class.
We've applied for that. The city of North Canton brought in the driving simulator from the state fire marshal's office, and we had it slated for our people to go over there. We specifically focused on the younger ones, but due to a malfunction with the simulator and some other issues, they weren't able to participate. That's still something we're looking at bringing in.
And again, it's a graduated program. Just because they even pass the emergency vehicle driving course, they're not sat in front seat and said go. They still have to go through some other evolutions, get experience, like maybe they start driving the vehicles around town, and then maybe they drive them back from the hospital, then maybe they start driving them to the hospital in non-emergencies. And a lot of these, again, like I say, a lot of these young people are already working in other departments, or they're working for private ambulance services that are doing some of these trips anyway.
And I'm not saying this to, be upset with one group or another. I just, at the time, the rationale as to what we did, I was behind.
I guess, Chief Stewart,
I'm
I would
behind
ask you, do you feel like you have firefighters who are better drivers than you?
Yeah.
Okay, they're probably younger than you?
No,
Okay.
because they've had more time in the seat, they've had more experience, they've been in weather like we had on
I'm
Saturday.
just asking you to compare it to age, relative to age. There are drivers who are better drivers than you, who are younger than you, and once again,
Probably
you're saying
not.
there's no one on the department that's a better driver than you because of experience?
Right,
So you're saying that age makes you a better driver?
I'm saying that experience makes you a better driver, not age. I'm 50 years old with 30 years of experience driving the vehicles. That's a lot different than 18-year-olds with less than 1 year of
I
experience.
guess what I'm asking you, is it different than a 30-year-old who may be a better driver than you? So, and that's what I'm hearing you say, and I just wanna make sure I'm hearing you say that age and experience makes you a better driver.
I don't think I said that at all, Mr. Mayor. I think that I said I'm comparing an 18-year-old driver with less than 1 year of experience that is going to be driving on a day like Saturday because they made it past their driving school, but they have less than 1 year of experience. You're gonna put them in an ambulance and they're going to drive a patient having a cardiac arrest to a facility using lights and sirens in the weather conditions that we had on Saturday. And that, whether you're a 30-year-old or a 50-year-old, is a lot different than the driving capacity and the ability of a person who has less than 1 year of experience.
So what age would you say would be the adequate age when you feel comfortable with someone driving a vehicle?
You mentioned 21.
21 is a safe number for you?
Safer, yep.
But to still let them practice drive when they're 18, so if you hire 18-year-olds, they can still, you can take them out on training runs, just not let them drive.
I think they're saying they would never do that.
There's ways to do that, and actually Captain Urian and I had set down a plan before the young explorers were hired, that they would go off campus and they would go to Reynoldsburg. So there's a 3-day program down there, and I recently found out that there's also one in Cuyahoga Falls that is a emergency operators driving course. It's put on by people who do that training every single day and give you a certification. And then they back your driving capabilities, because if you have problems, then you can go back on them for teaching your person to drive or not, or make mistakes, or all these different things. And they use drift vehicles so that you can get as though you are on ice. They have wet pavement vehicles. They have driving courses that are set up and are meant for that kind of training. And if we have money available through the grant to send people to those schools, I think that's the fiscal responsibility of that program. The Reynoldsburg program is a 3-day program that goes over emergency operations of an ambulance, and then there's a separate one that's a 3-day program that is operations for an engine, fire engine. Does that make them perfect because they went to a 3-day class? Absolutely not. But it puts them in a position where at least you can feel comfortable that they are aware of how to check out a truck before they go. Are they doing the walk-arounds? I see guys with 10 years of experience all the time that don't walk around the vehicle before they take off, and we drive off with a compartment door open and we lose a bunch of stuff on the road because they didn't do it right. They weren't trained right. So if we can get it in their heads at a young age, this is what the proper driving is. This is how you check your vehicle. We are the only industry on the road that does not require any kind of a CDL to operate a vehicle of these sizes with this amount of weight, air brakes, dually tires, all this weight on there from this equipment. We're the only ones. You can't go get on a truck rig anywhere and drive like this without having some training for months and months and months to get behind a big rig. And we're just as heavy as that.
Why don't they get a CDL?
Because we have
Agriculture and fire departments are exempt. And the reason that comes back to volunteer fire departments. Because you've got people that, it's like, it's a barrier to them to join the volunteer fire department. You mean, I better go out and get a CDL, I'm not gonna do that.
I can drive a tractor, so I can drive a fire truck.
Perfect example. I've even had that and had people quit because of that. Because they can drive a tractor, but I won't let them drive a fire truck, so they quit.
If I could make a note here, I understand your concern on that, it's a valid concern. And also looking at from our end, I think most of us, voted to go ahead and support the younger, volunteers, fire department to get the training there. But we weren't here to say, you have to put an 18-year-old in there. That was your job. That's the way I looked at it. We still wanted them to get the training. We still wanted them to have the ability to drive a vehicle. You could take a farmer who's been driving vehicles a lot bigger than, or the same size what you guys are running, joins the fire department, he's 18 years old, and he comes in here and he gets training on that vehicle. Where did his experience come from? And the only reason why I'm saying that is, I can understand you guys wanting to wait for them to have 3, 4, 5 years of experience before you put them in these rigs. But we wanted at least to open up the door, because this is an incubator for young talent. And we're gonna close the door on it because, we've got a driving restriction here. We could open up these doors. It's still up to you guys, the chiefs, to determine whether you're gonna let these young individuals drive the vehicle. We didn't dictate to say, hey, you guys have to use these people in the vehicle. So I'm just trying to get a handle on what your concern is. That's only one concern, and you just shared with us. What is the other reason why we're here?
Are we done with that one?
Well, I'm just,
Are we
I
done?
was gonna ask questions on, I'm trying to move this thing on because I wanna get a better idea. What are we doing here?
Well, that was the hiring practices part. That really wasn't a driving issue. That was, that whole thing was about hiring practices. The comment was made that we are breaking the agreement because we are not hiring people correctly.
Right.
That's
Was
not
made-
true.
That statement was made.
And that's
Yes.
not true.
Okay.
And so, if everybody is at least, maybe you don't have to agree to it, I'm not asking for everybody to shake their head, yes. I'm making an explanation of why I have chosen to go the way that I've gone with our department. I believe that after that meeting, you know, that happened on the 3rd, that there needed to be explanation done, and everybody needed to hear my side of what I'm asking the trustees to back me on.
Our insurance company it was fine. Now, your insurance company is against 18-year-olds driving, right?
The policy says
Isn't it
21-year-old.
the same insurance company and how municipal league?
No.
No?
Whitaker Meyer.
Whitaker Meyer.
Whitaker Meyer,
So,
okay.
the policy, you know, I don't have it in front of me, but it's along the lines of 21 years old or proper training. But they don't dictate what the proper training is.
Yeah.
It doesn't specify what that proper training is. So, with the decision made with the trustees and Chief Podlager, we decided that we're just gonna stay away from that. Limit liability.
I guess if we put 18 years on, excuse me for interrupting, but if we put 18-year-olds on, and they're not allowed to drive, what happens is, and we have two ambulance calls, there's a possibility that one ain't gonna go out the door. So that's one reason.
That's the reality.
Right, that's what we were afraid of, that's
Reality.
what, that's what we
Yeah.
were.
I'm saying you have to have
Because we
four
don't know.
drivers.
Right, and for us, the decision we made is, and I'll use Jake Morton as a good example. Jake Morton is probably, was hired when he was 18 years old. He
Yes.
invested a number of years in him as a fire explorer, and, I'd stake my life on letting Jake Morton drive me wherever he wants to take me if, I'm having a heart attack. So, you know, it's an individual choice, but that's the rationale we had was, there are some 18-year-olds that I would trust more than a 25-year-old.
No, I meant like, if we don't agree to have them drive, but we hire them, it almost defeats the purpose of the hiring.
No, it doesn't, because,
I see your point, Les.
I'm just saying, when there's two, you gotta have four people in there that can drive.
Right, and if you're gonna take away the option of driving for two of them, you know, then you're gonna have,
Chief has to say.
you know, it doesn't defeat the purpose of hiring them. What's wrong with earning it? What's wrong with coming in and earning the ability to drive? I'm gonna take a step back to 1990. I come out of the service, I was 22 years old. I had been driving for quite some time. I was stationed down at Wright Pat Air Force Base, driving back and forth 2 or 3 times a month on the highway, know what I'm doing, driving medical ambulances at the Air Force Base. I worked in the emergency room there. I drove buses out on the flight line, all kinds of stuff that we did. But when I got here, that all went out the door. There was a nice, wonderful man by the name of Terry Kroger that hired me on as a firefighter. And one thing was very clear to me, was that I knew nothing. He pointed that out to me every time he saw me, that I knew nothing. It didn't matter that I had been in the service for 4 years, worked as a medic, worked in the emergency room. I was doing things that nurses weren't allowed to do in the service. But it didn't matter, because I had to earn this. 1997, I was promoted to lieutenant. That was when I was allowed to drive an engine. 1997, 7 years. Because Terry Kroger had 5 guys that were able to drive the engines. And there were times, and again, Chief Pollard, you back me up on this, you had a house burning, there's 5 people standing at the station that can't drive the fire truck, and you wait. Is that old way of thinking? Yep, sure is. But we don't have that way of thinking now. We're not waiting for 10 minutes for somebody to come from home. We're not waiting on that one person that happens to be home to come and drive that truck. We have plenty of people. We got 44 people at the fire department of Lawrence Township. Most of them are able to drive all of the vehicles, so we're not waiting. We're not making that decision to delay anything. Everything is moving. Why can't they earn it? Why can't they wait? Why can't they do some training? Why can't they come in and just do, they get paid. It's more of a volunteer type thing. Come in for training, because I can tell you, the ones that we've hired, yeah, they went out and worked somewhere else. I've called them on the phone and said, hey, we need you to come in to do some training. We've got EMS training. Negative. Not having it. Earn it. That's all I want. Earn it. And then we'll put you in that driver's seat. Once I'm comfortable that while you're driving a truck down the road that belongs to the Lawrence Township trustees, that I'm not gonna end up on the wrong side of a lawsuit because I did something that I shouldn't have done, which is put somebody who doesn't have experience in behind the steering wheel where it's gonna cause a problem. We have enough accidents on the highways every single day where we have people that have experience that are running trucks off the road, rolling things over, killing patients. We don't need to make it easier for that to happen by putting people that are not experienced behind that wheel.
But
Training is one thing.
But are you saying that the scenario that Camp pointed out, is a moot point?
Yeah.
That's not, okay.
If we wanted to make a change,
Now, it might not be with Canal Fulton, because they are hiring and allowing 18-year-olds to move the equipment, but they don't move our equipment, they move their own.
correct.
So it might be an issue if our piece of equipment's the only one sitting there, and they got, you know.
Which was fixed because both of the ambulances in the bay belong to Canal Fulton besides our one.
Okay, so you answered my question, that's been fixed.
Yeah,
So back to camp, that's a moot point.
correct.
Well, the reason I brought that up is you can hire them. I don't have no problem with that. But if you hire them and have them on a run, you're gonna lose the drivers on that two-man crew. If you have two 18-year-olds,
Right.
somehow you're gonna lose, you're not gonna go out of the station if you put them on the runs. You can
Correct.
hire them in there to do all the training they want, but I don't have no problem with that. I'm just saying, the way it is now, if you put the 18-year-olds on runs and they can't drive, you know what I'm saying? You wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, I don't mean to be too sarcastic here, but I am. So what I hear is saying, if we hire 18-year-olds and we hire two of them and one of them has to drive when he's 19 years old, you don't want to, and it's a call in the township, you don't want us to send and that's a sarcasm, obviously.
Yeah, that is sarcastic because if he's driving your vehicle,
Mhm. And so you don't
The
have any
vehicle
problem
better
with
leave.
us providing that service to your citizens?
that's your decision to make that. And, you know, the fact that we're gonna even make a comment that we're not gonna cover the residents because of sarcasm.
Rhetorical.
Yes.
I have a question for Chief. How many 18-year-olds do you have driving now? I mean, when you put your squads together, your two-man squads, are they one older, one younger, or both 18? What's your practice on that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, Chief Potlager schedules the staffing.
Okay.
And typically, I believe we've only got one 18-year-old that's working right now. So, it's difficult not to pair them up. Well, I mean, it's easy not to pair them up with another 18-year-old because there's not another one that exists.
So how many are younger than 21, maybe 19 or 20? Because that's kind of the standard that we're talking about, is have that cutoff at 21.
Right.
So rather than just limiting this conversation to 18-year-olds, what about 19 and 20-year-olds?
I think it was 3 or 4.
Yeah. Three or four.
Okay.
So it's basically just scheduling so that you don't clump them all together at one shift. And, if you wanna find the common ground right in the middle, let them drive at 18, just don't let them drive on calls. Let them go through the training, give them some extra training between calls.
They're getting
It's not-
training. I don't know where this is.
I mean, if that's,
They go, as part of their firefighter 2 training, they go through an emergency vehicle operator course. It starts there wherever they go.
so let's say they're 18, they go through these classes, they get their certification. So for the next year and a half, maybe even 2 years, just give them some practice runs
We do.
Okay.
We have them drive
But
back from the
not to an
hospital.
actual, not on an actual.
We have them drive, if it's a non-emergency call going out the door, a patient lift or something like, they can drive the vehicle under supervision of the designated officer that day or the OIC. We take them out for 8 hours of driving time before they're signed off on our vehicles through Canal Fulton to drive that vehicle. Obviously, we can't take them out and let them run lights and sirens throughout the town. You're just gonna get that with experience for driving. That's why we have senior medics, senior firefighters, and OICs to supervise that, and if there's an issue, they address it and are supposed to bring it to our attention. If there is an issue with somebody driving, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I may hear about something 3 weeks later that so-and-so blew a stop sign. Okay, well, we don't know about it, we can't fix it. Then we can go back to that person, and we have, and taken corrective action. But they're getting trained. You know, just for that fact that if there's two 18-year-olds standing in the station, and an EMS call comes in, they can get in that rig, get out the door, and do what they need to do.
So there's an agreement to have, Mr. Podlocker, schedule these folks, and obviously you want 21-year-olds in them vehicles, right? Is this something that you guys want us to support for the living together for both, departments right now? I mean,
So when I do the schedule for both departments, and whatever they instruct me to schedule for them is what I do. They tell me when, someone's allowed to be on the schedule. The 18-year-old that works on the schedule now, Chief Green told me he was off probation, he's allowed to schedule, he schedules himself, I schedule him just like everyone else. But I don't schedule him for the township, and he doesn't work for the township. So, pretty much how it
And
works.
that's only because he hasn't passed his test yet.
Which he did.
Physical agility, we just got that, copy of that.
So now you'll start having him fill shifts on your schedule? No, because
Not 21.
Because he's not 21.
I agree with you. I'm just kind of sitting back, and I don't want to make this into a township, city thing, but I agree with the 21-year-old policy. I was one that voted against it. I've got the most experience in this building on driving truck.
Sure you do.
Absolutely. I haul tanker every day. I'll leave tanker tonight. You gotta be 23 years old to haul gasoline or hazmat product, and the training is rigorous. My son right now is up in Schneider, Holland, for a solid month before they even let him go. He's got a CDLA, he's had it for a while, but still they require him a solid month, 12 hours a day to train.
How many hours is that? Solid 12 hours a day?
12 hours, 5 days a week, sit him up in a motel room, and that's the kind of training you get.
And that's for a vehicle that he's going to drive every day. We're talking about, we're gonna train people to drive, and then in 6 months, they might get in that vehicle and drive.
And see, I agree with you on that. You know, you don't know the driving experience of a young kid going back and forth to school when they're 18 or 19, and the amount of limited driving they have. And then, you know, and I know there's a place for everybody to get trained, but you still have to have the basic knowledge of driving your own personal vehicle before you step up to the next rig. And if you're not even quite there yet, you know, stop signs, railroad tracks, the whole thing, it's scary to put someone. It's not only you're putting that kid in that position, you're putting that patient in there and his coworkers. And for me, that was my decision why 21 had to be the limit. So I want to make sure that you guys understand that. It's going to make a lot of 20-year-olds that think they know how to drive mad, but
Oh, I know.
I'm going on record for it because I've seen it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess my issue with that is, yeah, it's gonna make them mad, but it's 23 across the board everywhere that they can't drive those tanker trucks. We're kind of putting ourselves behind the 8 ball with some of these other fire stations around here because they do allow 18-year-olds to drive. So they can just say, well, Canal Fulton, Lawrence Township aren't gonna let me, then why should I stay?
I agree, but we're not Tri-State training for fire department personnel to learn how to drive a $185,000 vehicle and put our residents and our equipment, our liability insurance, because nobody in this room wants any kind of a problem.
No,
you know,
no.
for that kid, you're making that kid step up to the plate a lot of responsibility. When you're driving hot and your adrenaline's flowing, and you, like you said, you got a paramedic in the back trying to take care of a kid, take care of a patient.
And that's the hard side.
That's the worst
The
scenario.
light side of it is that people also get injured driving in a parade.
Right.
You know, we also see those every year, where you're driving 2 miles an hour and somebody gets crunched, picking up a piece of candy or something because they're so big and you're not used to driving and not used to looking at your blind spots and everything else. You can have a problem at 2 miles an hour and you can have a problem at 60.
I agree. Accidents happen no matter what,
Yep.
no matter how careful. It's just, I just look at the odds of saying, you know what, if you step it up at 21, I think at that point you have a lot less chance of getting hurt than someone that's 18 or 19. And I know my fellow council people are gonna be hating me, but whatever.
That's right.
We're disagreeing,
Right.
well, we're disagreeing on this position, you know.
All right, so it's obviously, it needs to be a little tweaking with the driving issues between the two departments, but are there any other issues as far as hiring practices that you want to address,
That will have
either of
to
you
go
guys?
defer to the Canal Fulton chiefs.
One thing I want to address is Chief Stewart mentioned that I had said something about that I would not have hired certain people. And there's probably a whole bunch of people sitting in the back row here that are thinking back, is he talking about me or something like that? Let me tell you about the one incident that comes to mind that probably would have been inhibited my, to hire this person. He was already hired by Lawrence Township, and I come out on the scene where a gentleman had an incident. He probably did something a little stupid, but this gentleman, he greets me at the door, and he's making fun of the patient right away. And so that was a big red flag to me. I've since hired him, he performs well, but that initial impression was horrible. Chief Stewart also mentioned something about the BCI checks. The BCI checks, there's no, I mean, we can go through the process, but an 18-year-old, they don't do, there's no BCI on somebody under 18 years of age. So if they've come through school and they've gone through their training and stuff like they've turned 18, there's no BCI. Eventually they'll have to get them, but when we hired me, I had that. The other thing about the physical agility test, and Chief Stewart refers to Stark State and Tri-C's physical agility test. On occasion, I believe that there's been variations of that when people couldn't get into those tests, where there was a physical agility test done in-house, and that's what has been done with some of these explorers. And some of these explorers may not have some of the trainings and things like that we're accustomed to, but that's one of the reasons why we want to hire them, because there are state grants for firefighters too and things like that. So if we get them in, even if they don't have experience, if they don't have training, we can hire them and we can get that paid for them.
But we did jointly hired a person who never made it to fire school, who made it through our physical agility test that would not have made it through Stark State or Tri-C. And we didn't put a year's worth of work into that person, but we did have to take them right to the end because they have to have a firefighting certificate within 1 year of being hired on the Township Fire Department under the ORC. So we went through the hiring process. There was a reason that we wanted that certified test done. That it was modified. The certified test did not happen. There was a certified test that happened, and then we had an employee for a year that never worked a shift, that never went through EMT school, but didn't go through fire school, and we came down to the wire, and myself and a couple other firefighters took that individual to the West Side Station and said, "What is your biggest fear?" And the fear was ladders. Fire school has a huge thing with ladders and crawling, that they had a pre-existing condition and their knees did not allow them to do extensive crawling or extensive climbing. If we had had that certified test done, that person would not have finished that certified test because there was extensive climbing in both of those programs, and we would have not had to do that. And it's at no cost to us because the individual who's applying has to pay for that test. So it's at no cost to the city or the township to have that test done that's certified, that doesn't fall back on us. It's the exact same for every person who goes through it. Those tests are accepted throughout the state and sometimes throughout the country for those places where they have those tests done so that they don't have to keep redoing those tests. So it comes to us that, you know, we're not putting ourselves on the line for giving somebody a test. If they get injured during that test, it's not on us. If they pass the test, then we have an employee that we know probably is starting out healthy. Healthy meaning they have good ankles, knees, backs, shoulders, joints, and that they can lift a certain amount of weight, that they can put their body under certain stress even without being in an emergency. And that gives us a little bit of, you know, idea of how that person's gonna react when we do start to put them through fire school.
I see that the system works. We had a young person that come out of our Explorer program. They put an effort into becoming a firefighter EMT. Didn't work out for them. They resigned.
What else?
What else?
I'm ready to move on.
Me too. Okay. So, the next big hot topic was the pay increases. And when you talked before about agreeing to disagree, Chief Dirk and I are going to agree to disagree on how the whole thing went down. So,
Well, let me say that for years that I've ever been here, we've always met with the township trustees, either officially or unofficially, and agreed on wage increases. And this is the first time it's ever happened where we found out that you guys passed that longevity increase to your driver, to your personnel, and we had no recourse to even discuss it beforehand. So that was kind of a shock, and it kind of deviated from past practice that, you know, there were years that we were willing to give more, and you guys, the township, didn't have enough money in their budget, and we were asked to,
that's not necessarily true.
let's
We
roll
had the
back.
money in the budget.
Maybe
The
this
trustees
year.
did- No.
Oh,
We
in
had the
previous
money in the
years?
budget. Yeah, we
Okay.
had the money in the budget. The trustees wanted to keep us in line with the rest of the employees of the township that got a 1 or a 2%
Okay.
pay increase. It had nothing to do with us not having money.
Okay.
I assure you, the township coffers for the township fire department are in the black, and they're healthy. So, when he was right, I walked into the office and told him what I was planning on doing for pay raises on longevity. He said that I'm prepared to offer 2%, and I can't do that, pay raise that you're talking about. Is that wrong?
Probably something similar to that. I think when you told me about longevity, I think the way that I heard it, I must have heard it wrong, that you were gonna increase the pay by year, and I thought that was gonna be an incremental year, like, this is what our pay raise is this year, then next year we'll go here and here and here, not that it was necessarily a longevity.
The second half of that was that we were going to not do a stipend pay to our junior grade officers. Captains and lieutenants were no longer gonna get a stipend pay. That pay was gonna get wrapped into the hours that they worked, based on 624 hours a year. That 624 hours was an average from what those employees had worked in 2017 and 2018. So we were taking that lieutenant pay, that $3,500 or whatever that is, and the captain pay, $7,400 or whatever dollars that is, spread it out over 624 hours. You know, over the years, you know, there has been folks that have come into the fire service, been promoted, and, you know, you look at what you're getting for your dollar. And this way, Dan and I felt that if you come to work and do your job, and this is what your pay rate is, that's when you get your bonus, instead of just having it handed to you.
Right.
And if you don't work the 624 hours, you don't get the money. 624 hours equals what?
One shift a week.
One 12-hour shift a week.
Is that something new compared to what you passed initially? Because when I came to the township meeting and asked you about the requirements for how many hours they had to work in order to...
You're talking about longevity.
Longevity?
You're talking about longevity.
Yeah.
I'm talking about stipend pay. I'm talking about the pay that,
Okay. I got
the
that.
officer pay that
I got that.
all the officers get right now, except for Chief Durkee, who gets paid however he's paid, 20 hours a week. So everybody else, myself and Dan included, gets a stipend pay. And the trustees felt the need to look at the payment that we had set up and how we set up our style to do our pay, and felt that it was a good thing to do for the whole township, because now your officers are engaged. And for them to be engaged, you know, we're continuously trying to improve training. We're continuously trying to improve communications. We're continuously trying to improve our education and our small group trainings. Everything we do around here starts off with 3 or 4 people. So if we have officers that are able to come to work on a regular basis, we can get some things squared away so we have some consistency. Consistency is one of the biggest problems that we have with our system. We have 2 different kinds of management, obviously. And, you know, when we put that stuff together, you also have 2 different kinds of expectations and 2 levels of how things are going to work out. So, you know, Dan and I are not against the community, but we are, you know, we try to keep the concerns of Lawrence Township, obviously, in the front of our mind.
How many lieutenants did you have?
3.
3.
3 lieutenants, 1 captain.
And 1 assistant chief?
1 assistant chief, 1 chief, yep. So, you know, as we put this in play, we felt like this was a little better way to have our officers engaged with our employees. When we, and then we added on the bonus for the longevity, and that's a whole other reason, which we'll get into here in just a minute. But when you added that in, you know, as Chief Green brought up in the video, on the 3rd, a captain makes $31 an hour. Absolutely. That includes his paramedic pay at $15 an hour. It includes his longevity, should he be there 5 years, which fortunately for us, our captain has been here 5 years. And then it also includes the split down of his stipend pay. So that equals $31 an hour. That money would have been his no matter what. Doesn't matter whether he gets it in a stipend, it doesn't matter whether he gets it on an hourly rate. So the next question is, what do we do about holidays? Because we pay time and a half on a holiday. The holiday pay is based off of that $15 an hour. It is not considered with stipend and is not considered into the longevity. So the holiday pay would be based off of $15 an hour, or whatever the base rate is, whether it's firefighter EMT, EMT advanced, or EMT paramedic, because not everybody gets paid $15 an hour. So when we put all that stuff together and we put our numbers together, we felt like we were still in good shape. You know, we've come to council over several years and talked about how, you know, in 2010, mid 2010, 2011, the firefighters took a pay cut so that we could expand staffing. 2009, they agreed to take a pay cut of approximately $5 an hour so that we could expand our staffing and cover nights. The firemen.
You're gonna have to explain that more to us, because I've asked you for a couple interpretations on that. So, if you would take me through that. So,
all right. So
in 2009,
yep,
someone from the 12 p.m. or 6 p.m. shift to the 6 a.m. shift. Is that basically how we broke it down?
There was 2 different pay rates at that time.
Okay, so one
was
was
12
6 a.m., 6 p.m.
Anybody who was on staffing, doesn't matter what time they're working.
Okay.
Anybody who's on staffing was making $12.40
right here.
12 something.
This was a memo that went out when council approved the pay raises January 2009. If they were working duty staffing, duty crew, as a paramedic, they were getting $12.73 an hour.
Now, duty meaning they're here.
On duty at the station.
On duty at the station.
If the call went out and they came in from home, a paramedic was paid $16.72 an hour.
That's no longer duty staffing?
No, they were coming from home.
Right,
Well,
just in layman terms.
That's just to do that 2 or 3 hour stint they're gonna work.
Yeah,
right.
They're not
correct.
staying the whole 8 or 10 or 12.
Right.
So, yeah.
And Mr. Schwab was finance director when we sat down and went through this, and so we could provide, the goal was to get people in the station 24 hours a day, to have that coverage for the
Right,
community.
but so I just don't want us to like twist words and say that it's a $5 an hour pay cut, when really it was being paid to come in and work during a period of time at a higher rate because.
Correct.
Okay, now, on top of that, were they paid anything just to stay home and be on call?
$2 an hour
Yeah,
at night.
at that time, to cover the midnight shift, they were paid $2.50 an hour.
Okay, so you could
On
get,
call.
okay, so you could get paid, help me with my math, $30 to stay at home, and if there weren't any calls, you got $30 for just staying at
You
home.
didn't get $30. You got paid for 6 hours.
6 hours?
Yeah,
And then if a call came in.
6
when
times
we-
250?
yeah, it was like 1 hour of pay
Okay,
to be on call. It's like 1 12-hour, you got $12 for 6 hours.
okay. So $2 an hour?
Right, but
Okay,
we
I
also.
heard 250, so that's what.
But we also had people coming back on callback.
Mhm.
It wasn't, I mean, we had, you know, when you had that money out there at that time, you're making $4 and whatever, $4.25 more an hour. We had people come back for that.
Mhm.
And we were spending money in that. We were spending $30,000 or $40,000 a year out of our budget on callback pay.
And callback meaning?
For people to come back to the station when everybody else left.
Right, okay.
And that was
Because we
just
didn't have
us.
4 people on staff.
Right.
Yeah, that was
So-
just Lawrence Township.
So those were people who really weren't being paid $2 an hour, they were just, the call came in and they
Yep.
came running to it.
Yes.
All right, all right. And that's what I'm trying to, I've been trying to get an understanding of what you're talking about when you say $5 an hour cut in pay. And so I think I'm.
And there were people exclusively that would come in for callback that didn't work shift. So
Uh-huh.
those people always got paid that rate. They did absolutely, for every hour that they worked, because they didn't work shift work, took a $5 an hour pay cut.
And came into every single training, because that was the training pay also.
Correct. Trainings, callbacks, we had people that's what they did. When they were available, when they got off their, 4 o'clock, 9 to 5 job, they came in, and that's what they got paid all the time.
All right.
So let's come back to 2018. So in front of you, on one of the handouts that I gave you, there is a thing that says medic rates other jobs at the top of it, on the top left-hand corner. Chief Fowler did a survey of folks. And the reason that he did the survey was that in the next column over there where it says call-offs and short runs, run shorts, those are the amounts of call-offs that we were having each month. And the run short category is the amount of shifts that we ran short each month.
We didn't have a
Where we
full
didn't
4
have
on staff.
4 people, but we
I
didn't.
couldn't find replacements.
We didn't go into it far enough to find out if that was short because you had 3, short because you had 2, but we obviously have had days where the short is 1 person on a Saturday for several hours at a time until you can get somebody to come in and cover. So for us to be able to tell the public, the council, the trustees, that they're giving us all this ability to run this department and get them protection and have them have faith in us. If we can't get 1 truck out the door because we don't have enough personnel to transport on 1 truck on the first call, that's a problem. And we tried different things to get people to come in. Dan set up a scheduling idea where you could say, I can work every other Tuesday, I can work every 8th day, I can work every 6th day. We tried to pre-schedule people so that it would cut down on the amount of shifts that we had to fill, and we still couldn't get them filled. And we couldn't figure out what we can do to get people to come to work. So as we started looking around, and we started seeing all these other items going on, of course, Mr. Swab said something here a little while ago that just struck me as realistic, that we are a training grounds for other places. Kind of proud, but it also is, bad business for us to train people very well so that they can go somewhere else and get a full-time job. We had In 2017, we did a hiring, we hired 12 people in 1 year. And the year after that, we had one of those people left. All the rest of them have left for whatever reason. Either they didn't make it through probation. People will come in, they'll turn an application in with us. We go through the hiring process, we do everything, and then figure out that they were on 3 different lists for 3 different full-time jobs, and they got 2 other offers somewhere else. So now we're out. And that goes to the point where we've even gotten them gear, get fitted, get them sworn in. We're doing training, and the 3rd training, they call us and say, hey, I'm not coming, I got a full-time job somewhere else, I'm leaving the state. Oh, thanks, you know? So it leaves us high and dry. So how do we address these issues? How do we go fix this? So we did our survey, and the numbers that you see there on the left side of the sheet are all paramedic rates for people for wherever they work, part-time or full-time. You'll see a couple of them there that say ED. That's the emergency rooms. Mercy and Altman are paying that amount of money, depending on, and Suma, Barberton, Wadsworth, all these different emergency rooms are paying depending on what your capabilities are and how long you've been a paramedic. They take all that into consideration. So they can go there and work 12-hour shifts. They can work full-time there, part-time there. They get benefits there, and they're making $18 an hour, and they're not doing near what we're doing here. They're not getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning, or going into sometimes a very undesirable situation, or coming here and just doing nothing. They're going to a job where they're doing something. They're busy for 24 hours or 12 hours, and they have options. And there isn't anybody sitting in this room that works on the fire department that has only one W-2, except for these 2 gentlemen over here that are retired from somewhere where they were getting a W-2. So when you start asking these people, well, what gives? How come we're calling off on every shift? Or how come we put you on the schedule and you're calling off? Well, I'm working somewhere where I have an opportunity to get a full-time job by working part-time. Oh, okay, well, that's good. I'm not gonna tell you where to work, I don't pay your bills. Or I'm working, there's several fire departments in the area within 10 minutes of Canal Fulton and Lawrence Township that are paying in the high teens and low 20s for them to come and work part-time, doing the same job they're doing here. Sometimes in a smaller area with less calls. Imagine that. And they're making more money to do this. So, you can relate it to having a bike shop downtown, and three streets over, somebody else opens a bike shop, and it's the exact same scenario that you have, and they're paying $5 more an hour. Where are they going to want to work?
I guess, Mark, before you go too much further, I guess this all sounds great. I guess my question to you, to interrupt you, is this would have been a great conversation to have before you agreed to this, and we weren't part of it. And that's my question is, why didn't we have this conversation then?
Because when I approached Chief Durkee about our pay raises, he said he wasn't interested. If he's not interested, how am I gonna? He said he couldn't afford it. He said we can't afford it. He said I can give 2%. I can't do that.
All right. So, like Mr. Schwab said earlier, history tells us that we adjusted raises based on what the township could do. So there was consideration. So now all of a sudden this consideration doesn't exist anymore.
Well, without becoming out of line, I would say that there has been times when we have had consideration on things from the council, and those things that we're all agreed on didn't happen. And one thing about that is the fourth man. We were told, we sat in a meeting and said we were going to have a 4th man put on. We're all good. Everything's all great. And I know there's extenuating circumstances, but nobody came back and told us that there was extenuating circumstances. It just didn't happen. And
but
we
it's
also
happened now.
I understand that.
Okay.
And then we had an agreement on hiring an attorney. Everybody sat there and agreed on it. And then that went a different direction. Nobody came back and talked to us about it, it was just done a different way. So I would say that between the municipalities, there is room to make decisions that are based off of what we can do through our, system, our budget or whatever.
So,
And I do agree, I would
let's
have
just
liked to
come-
have had this conversation before. I would have loved
So-
to have been sitting here having this conversation 6 months ago. But for it to be said that it was not known is not truth.
So let's go back 6 months ago. Were you in any discussions with forming a district with, other municipalities?
No, I can't form another district with another municipality.
Why is that?
Because North Lawrence is not a municipality, and it's not a fire district.
Okay, so, like, I know I attended one township meeting and I heard you discussing Tuscarawas Township and Baughman Township.
That was not a fire district, and those entities were talking about the contracts that they have with North Lawrence Fire Department, and the discussion was, if we combine with North Lawrence Fire Department, what happens to that contract? That was the discussion.
So when you say combined, you don't necessarily mean a fire district?
I absolutely do not mean a fire district, it can't happen.
So if we formed a fire district, we couldn't form a fire district because of North Lawrence?
No, that has nothing to do with forming a fire district. North Lawrence can't, you have to have for it to be a fire district, for them to join it, they would have to give up their privatization
Okay.
and become part of the district. Because
So
they
it could happen?
Absolutely.
So the conversations you were having with Tuscarawas Township, Baughman Township?
I didn't talk to Baughman Township.
Okay. Oh, okay. I thought
No.
I heard them mention. Okay. So regardless, so the point of what stopped those conversations from going forward, you would say, is because North Lawrence couldn't or didn't want to dissolve?
I've never said they stopped. I don't remember that ever happening.
All right. I'm just trying to get to the point here. We've been here for an hour and 15 minutes, and and I know this is good to air these grievances, but I just really want to focus and look for some resolution here. So your pay raises, basically they boiled, when I came to the township meeting and said they 35% more for a majority of your employees. You said you had 44 firefighters, and what percentage of those would you say have more than 5 years of experience?
14?
I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
I'd have to tally it up.
Somewhere between 14 and 18 firefighters.
What do you think the impact to your budget's gonna be? I know it's hard to articulate because you don't know how many hours, but I'm sure you had to have some
it's-
forecasts.
Like, go ahead.
$55,000.
$55,000.
I forecasted.
But
Based
the,
on
but
last
the, but the
year's-
stipend, captains and the lieutenants and everything, you don't feel that they were probably doing their 624 hours at times, so you're kind of rolling those hours,
We based those numbers off of what they were able to achieve.
right?
So we're not saying that they weren't doing those hours.
But
We're
that's what you
saying-
feel comfortable, that's what they should achieve, 625 hours this next year.
Yep. And if they don't achieve that,
You're
then
gonna
they don't get
relook
that
at it
money.
again.
Well, they don't get that money. It's, that's on them. If they
Well,
don't.
they've gotta meet the 625 hours,
Yeah,
but you're paying it out as they go now.
right.
Right, so what happens if they don't?
That just money stays in the budget.
Okay.
I'm not sure I understand that.
They budgeted 625, is that right? So
624.
for a lieutenant, you're expected to work 625 hours, and that's what you budgeted this year, based on your stipend and the $5 longevity
If you
plus your regular
work,
pay?
if you work 624 hours, 25 hours,
Yeah,
24 hours.
but you can work more.
Yeah.
They're not
but-
limiting you to
correct.
624, but on the
Well,
budgetary wise,
But
they're
I'm
expecting.
doing that because I take care of the schedule.
Right.
So
There is a
I can-
limitation to it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm monitoring that, and
Okay.
we talked about having quarterly meetings to review that so that we stay on budget.
that's great, it's more accountability that you're gonna get what you pay for, your stipend's gonna be actually used for the 625 hours.
Yes.
Your stipends are paid at the end of the year, I'm
No,
assuming, right?
it's
No.
rolled into their deal.
It's rolled into, theirs were quarterly. When they did theirs, the lieutenants and captains were paid quarterly on their stipend. Now they're getting paid bi-weekly on their stipend. But it's not a stipend anymore, they're earning it, earned income.
So as long as they work one shift a week, they earn it.
Yep.
They get that.
And then if they miss a week and they work 2 days the next week,
Yep.
and go on vacation, they still earn that rate.
Yes.
So they could work 4 days in a week and equal what,
Take the next day, take the next week off.
makes 3 weeks off.
But I don't schedule them like that.
Yeah, we haven't noticed, you know, in the first month that we did this, there was a, conversation about the senior guys are gonna take all the shifts.
Yeah.
It's impossible, because they sign up what they're available for, and Chief Podlager makes the schedule. We start off with an officer or an OIC, we make sure we have a second paramedic, the other 2 shifts are up for grabs. And that doesn't mean that those first 2 people have met the requirement to get paid full pay, because we have officers on the department right now that don't make the full longevity, for the 5 years.
And once again, the longevity has no conditions on it as far as how many hours you have to work in a year.
Well, after we watched the meeting, we decided that's something we should look at. So we are going to put some conditions on that, so that you can't have somebody, that was something that we didn't think about, was, you know, how are we gonna regulate this, to make sure we don't have somebody that comes in and works, you know, comes in for 1 callback a month, and in 5 years we owe them extra money. So we are going to put conditions on that, we just haven't finalized that yet. We just started this conversation this morning, so.
Do you have, I'm not sure how your township does this, but do you have a legislation for your different positions within the fire department that shows what each person makes?
Yep.
That, you know,
Every year when
would help.
we do our first meeting of the year, all that's laid out for every employee, so that the department heads, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, all the officers, road crews, that's all laid out. At the
Well,
first meeting of the month,
well,
first meeting of the year.
since this is pertaining to the fire department, if the mayor had a copy of the fire department's information, if that's good for the entire year, at least that would be a way towards, you know, I'm not sure when you guys start your budgeting process, I don't know, September or October, we could have at least know, well, might change next year and trigger a conversation between the 2 departments.
Yeah, we're not gonna, I am confident that with this, that we just did, it's gonna be several years before we would even, I'll be gone before they come back to the table and ask you for more money.
But is there a document that you could share with the city with that information in it, to have it,
Yeah.
to where,
It's there.
you know,
Whatever, I'm
'Cause
be
that would
happy
be-
to, I do all that kind of work, you know, so, I mean,
because that's a good comparison for us that don't look at this every day, you know, or involved in this, to have,
As I do the schedule, I do the schedule once a month.
but not your scheduling.
No,
Not your
but I
scheduling.
do the schedule once a month, and I keep track of everyone's hours and pay
Right.
rates and I have all that data.
But just to know that the number.
Are you talking about like what we start with, like what I make as the chief?
Well, like on our ordinances, we have the chief's pay, lieutenant's pay.
Yeah.
Just the, not the person's name, just the
Yes.
title and the,
Yes.
and
we
how
have-
it works, you
Yes, we
know,
have
and
that.
explaining the longevity, because that would help to have it. I mean, for me, that would help.
Okay.
When we ever sit down and talk about things, like, you know, you have apples to apples.
Yes, we have.
And
that.
no, okay.
So, with this new contract that you negotiated, have you had any shifts go unfilled since the beginning of the year, and how many?
I have not had any on the Lawrence Township side go unfilled.
So this has resolved your problem 100% of?
As
of right now.
And I'm just gonna put the cards on the table. You know, to me, it's like you're throwing money at it, and, you know, I sense that there's, like so much tension going on in the station right now, that, it's palpable to me. And, so let's put the cards on the table and, are you looking at another fire district someplace else?
Nope.
Okay, so as far as moving forward with the living together arrangement, basically what you're telling us is you created an environment where the people who are supposed to be employed by both departments are now working for a much higher rate when they're working for Lawrence Township, so essentially they have far less incentive to work for Canal Fulton.
Not all of them. Not all of them, because did you all just not put a pay raise on? What's your pay raise, $15.73 an hour?
We haven't done anything yet.
Tentatively.
Is that what you, okay,
'Cause
so
for me,
so
you
base rate?
know, I would have the same kind of criteria where if we're paying you more money, we wanna see some results, so we wanna see shifts are going to be filled, so that there's,
In
when you
fairness,
negotiate.
in fairness, it's not like there's 27 shifts that aren't being filled at Canal Fulton.
Mhm.
It was 5.
Okay,
Which, when you look at, you know, what we're looking at, the call-offs and the short runs from January through July, and the lowest one was 15, 5's pretty good. The rest of them are
but
filled.
you haven't had any shifts go unfilled,
I have not,
It's been
right now.
It's been 1 month though.
3 weeks,
Yeah.
4 weeks, okay. So you think this is a solution to?
Well, I wanna bring something
Go
else
ahead.
up, okay? So you made the comment that we're throwing money at it. That's because we have nothing else to throw at it. We don't have any vacation time. We don't have any, sick time. We don't have any personal days. We don't have insurance. We don't have anything going into retirement. But I'm looking at this thing from Quad Ambulance District, which is an ambulance district that is down outside of Canton Township and down in southern Starr County down there. So theirs is longevity. They have personal days, vacation, sick time, and somehow they got some kind of retirement plan in for them.
But that's for the full-time
For the-
employees, so
okay,
they
so-
have
but they're
probably
part-time
paying them.
employees that can become full-time.
Yeah,
Probably paying into PERS because
It
it
is
is an ambulance.
PERS.
right. So
Yeah.
we have none of that to offer.
What
But
else do we have?
if I was 18 years old and I could get a job that had benefits instead of working somewhere for $18 an hour, even if that's what you start with, but you have no other benefits to go with it, why wouldn't I go work at an ambulance company that does nothing but ambulance runs and rescue calls? And that's what we're running into, is you can go, and I realize that, you know, in the last meeting, there was talk about not caring what other people do. But we have to care what other people do. That's the only way that we can stay on top of things, right? I mean, they can drive 15 minutes north of here and make $23 an hour at Fairlawn. Or they can drive 10 minutes north of here and go to Coventry and make $17 an hour with no experience as an EMT and not over $19 an hour as a paramedic. And, you know, that's close. And we've lost people for that. Now, we haven't lost them, but they go there and they work. And when they can go there and work instead of come here and work, what other incentive do we have to bring them here? I mean, we're all nice people. We like to have a good time. We have a beautiful station. We have great equipment. We have very good public officials that are trying to do the best thing for our community. But that's not enough. So money is what we have right now to give them.
Outside of the 2 points that you just brought up, what are some of the behind the scenes things that are going on that's negatively affecting the living?
Sure you want to have that right now?
That's why we're here.
Yeah, that's why we're here. I mean, there's, you know, and without beating each other up and being unprofessional, which might be hard to do.
Consistency is one of the biggest things. Consistency
Okay.
is huge.
If I could interrupt, I want to dismiss Mr. Rouse.
Oh, yeah.
He's got to get his kids to
Absolutely.
baseball tryout, so.
I've got another half hour.
Oh, you
Oh,
sure?
you should have left.
Boy, he's
Well, there's financial questions asked in the next
Could
30
go
minutes.
on.
You're gonna regret that. All right. Go ahead, Mark.
All right.
So I want to hear
I'll
from,
just
you know,
finish.
from both chiefs.
You say, I'll just,
what things are.
I just finished what I started, is consistency is a huge thing. You know, we took time to sit down and put rules together. Chief Green is fantastic at that. putting SOGs together, putting it in a book, and doing research. That is one of the things that he is fantastic at. Chief Podlager, on the other side of that, also can, put all kinds of information together and we can put it out. But if we don't have the same consistency through communication to get that stuff done, and a prime example is if we have some kind of a disciplinary problem on one department, how does it affect the other department? So if I suspend someone because of an action that they did that justifies suspension, how does it fall under Canal Fulton? Because we have a rule in there called conduct unbecoming, and does it fall under that? And Chief Durkee and I have, again, two different management and leadership styles, and I have a much different outlook on what discipline should be carried out for certain things and how it should be applied. So when we have my system being carried out, it's a little bit more aggressive, and then that causes a little bit of distension. We've had opportunity where we have suspended folks, demoted folks. We've given them the opportunity to retest after a period of time and step back up. We didn't kick them off the fire department, which is what I wanted to do first, but I didn't do that. And it just it leaves a little bit to be desired. Go ahead, Chief.
As far as the discipline, and I suppose we do have different theories. I kind of subscribe to a gentleman now deceased, Alan Brincini. He was the chief of the Phoenix Fire Department, and he was the kind of chief that he would try to let people use their skills to what they were. Like one of the incidents I recall was there was a fire in a pet shop, and there was a particular person on the crew that had some experience with snakes, and there was a snake that was harmed somewhat by the fire and stuff like that. So he allowed that company to be taken out of service because she had the skill to do that kind of thing. That being said, one of his management theories, and at a seminar that I went to, he talked about a firefighter named Mongo, and he says his management theory is Mongo does good, you give Mongo a cookie. Mongo does bad, here Mongo, we got to talk. And that's kind of my management philosophy. Now, when I get a report from somebody, a write-up, I bring them in and counsel them, and those reports are put in their personnel file. And, so you can look at those and see how those things were handled. Now, we're looking at progressive discipline. Now, if that infraction occurs again, we'll take it to the next level. If it occurs again, we'll take it to the next level. Or if there's multiple infractions within a certain period of time, we'll take it to the next level. But very rarely have I felt that I had to take it to that level.
So in regards to that, and I need to apologize for my statements earlier, this is really what I was trying to get to. I wanted to get a basic idea of what we're here for, and now it's clear. So we're talking about hiring practices, because obviously a difference between there. The minimum age for driving, we're clear on that, and the rates of pay, and then also the inconsistencies in managing the differences, right? So I'm looking at four things that I'm going to take with me and try and focus on as far as, how I'm going to approach it. But, I mean, have you guys really sat down and thought about coming up with, a blend of how you guys could work together with this to get through these 4 items? Have you sat down and really worked something out, put something down on papers? Sometimes you need a sergeant, and sometimes, you need the general in here. I don't know. I don't know how you guys really want to work.
In the past, we've had a good ability to have meetings and things like that. But I think this has been kind of an odd year for both Chief Stewart and I. Both of us have lost parents this past year, so there's been, at least for me, I've had some other focuses for a little bit. So certainly communication would help and sit down and maybe work through some things. I'm not going to deny that. And as far as the wages go, let me just want to say one thing. I think it's the greatest thing what they've done. It's certainly brought a lot of conversation to the table that I think people here, people there are realizing what the pay scales are and what our personnel are worth. We're talking about people that when I worked in Stowe, our medical director said that some of the skills that we do are the same as a third-year resident in the emergency room, and yet we're paying them $14, $15 an hour. So I think it's great that this has gotten to the table.
I just want to say that what I've heard from this very last few minutes about the disciplinary issue. Now, the Lawrence Township's policy and procedures within the fire department, you've got your everything laid out that your employees are given, and they are aware of, discipline, infractions, what happens if you do this, they have that, right?
Yes.
And our city employees have their separate.
No, it's the same policy.
It's all the okay. They're all the same.
book.
It's all the same policy. So whatever is written down, you may interpret it or not interpret it, but maybe add to maybe something that is a disciplinary measure where if it's the same thing, you're both doing something possibly different with the individual that needs to be disciplined, sorta, because you could pay all your employees a good amount of money, but if you have internal frustration, a good group of people working together, that everything is, I won't say fair, but people are treated with respect and treated honestly across the board. The pay's great, and they should be paid what they're worth. But if you've got internal issues where somebody's being reprimanded in one way and reprimanded in another, that kind of internal conflict, I don't care how much money you're making, if you're not happy where you're at with your management and how you're being treated, and I'm not pointing at you, I'm just saying overall, you could be making good money and things still are gonna not work out. I mean, I don't know if anybody understands what I'm saying.
I think it's just the penalties. The penalties are different from the rule infraction when you enforce them. Is that what you're saying?
Well,
you can be making all the money, but if you're feeling like you're being treated different than someone else, you're gonna have that internal that I can see, and I don't care how much money you're getting paid, that needs to be.
And I hear one of the things Stuart says about the disciplinary things. I think he was talking about it. If he suspends somebody, I'm a different entity. How can I suspend them too unless they've committed an infraction?
I think we start getting into some legal issues with that.
See, that's what, how does that get resolved? Because
If
that's.
infractions happen while they were working for
Fire
Lawrence
district?
Township, and they deal with it, if they weren't on our time as a Canal Fulton employee.
Right.
And we do that. We
How do we
send them
we
stuff
don't have
and they
just
send
cause
us
for
stuff.
discipline.
Right.
We do that now.
Total
So-
different entity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just, if you don't
That's-
resolve that, you're not gonna, nothing else is really gonna bring it around, in my opinion.
And that goes back to a comment that the mayor made a while back about the difficulty in serving two masters. That we're one group of people living under one roof with two different management styles, some different rules, some different things that go on between, the municipalities to the governments. Those are things that we knew we were going to have coming in this. This is not new. This is, none of the things that we're talking about today happened yesterday.
But we didn't think that they would persist this long
Right.
because we were working.
We thought we were going to a fire district. That was the whole reason that we came in.
So is that why we're here? When Danny wants to cut to the chase, and that's kind of where I wanted to start with, is, where do we go from here? Because we just spent an hour and 40 minutes talking about what we already do. There's a
I
problem.
think it was good to get it out of the
No,
way.
I got good clarification on it.
So, where do we go from here?
I guess my question was then, we've heard these issues, so the mayor talked about putting the cards on the table, so I'll ask both of you guys straight out. Are these issues enough to say that the status quo cannot continue moving forward and that we need to start looking at a change in direction of something in some way, maybe one of the ways the mayor laid out, maybe something different?
I'll say that the status quo as it exists now we probably can't continue, but if we could roll back to a few years ago when this first started, with a spirit of cooperation, I think absolutely we can continue.
So,
Chief Stewart, do you agree with that?
Yeah.
any of you guys in the back wanna say anything?
Fully.
Seriously? Does anybody, I mean, you guys all work here, right? Anything you wanna add to, in a professional and polite way?
If I may, I'd
this
like to add
conversation?
something else. This living together arrangement was supposed to be a stepping stone to the joint fire district. So it's been a carrot that's been hanging out there. But the longer we continue, some of those goals of merging equipment and this and that start falling away. And Chief Stewart and I have to start thinking about, what if this situation dissolves? Now we have to start focusing on Canal Fulton, he has to start focusing on Orange Township.
You're right.
So if we're not going to be moving towards a fire district, then the opportunity for problems continues in the future.
The target, it sounds to me like there was gonna be one leader to run it with, because that's what a district's gonna be. It's gonna be run by one person,
Yes.
whoever that guy may be.
Yes, sir.
And
And a separate board.
Right.
Now we're getting someplace.
And I guess, I see what the direction is, but we're not there
That's
now.
always plan
So-
A.
So let me ask you this, what if you guys were to set something up where there was one commander?
We tried that once. How'd that go, Chief Green?
Oh, that was great.
Okay.
Explains my chair disposition.
Yeah.
Help me out, I don't, what do you
I
mean?
was, the chief at the time, township chief at the time resigned, whatever reasons, I don't know.
Who was that?
Dave Stahl.
Okay.
That night that happened, Marvin Hargrove, who was trustee at the time, called me and said, would you be interested in serving as the interim township fire chief? And I said, well, I need to check with Mayor Grogan, because he was my boss. Talked to Mayor Grogan, and he thought it was a great idea because he was pro fire district, regionalization of safety forces. So I served in that position for a year. Some annexations took place, and I think Mr. Stevens, you're the only trustee that's left that was.
It's all your fault, Mike.
No, Mr. Stevens was very supportive. I can't say the same for Mr. Hargrove or Mr. Harbaugh. I was put in a very bad political position, and so I decided to step down since my primary focus was initially as the chief of Canal Fulton.
Because you were.
It was obvious we weren't gonna go to a district, and they were upset over some annexations and a few other issues that went on between the city and the township, had really nothing to do with the fire department. What I was being pulled in is a political punching bag, and that wasn't gonna happen. Cause I'm gonna swing back.
So,
Yep, and that, like you said, if you went back to that
But
slide,
we
or
did
went
make,
back
I
to
would
our
say we did
agenda.
make, during that year, Mayor, we did make progress. We were able to standardize a lot of equipment, you know, come up with some joint rules. There was some discontention among people on both sides. You know, some guys were anti-working for Orange Township, some people were anti-working for Canal Fulton. We kind of weeded those people out. But there was also, you know, we were able to standardize, at that point, move towards true standardization of equipment, turnout gear purchasing, SCBA's, you know, that's when it really started that we could bring this together as one.
Right. But now the problem is funding, right, would you say, where you have more funds available than we do?
mhm.
Okay. So if we went back to our options list, status quo, you're saying that's not an option?
I'm saying status quo or status quo with adjustments.
Let's take one of them off.
Status quo.
Status quo comes off. Okay, so we got an option of status quo with adjustment, one chief with 2 departments. And Chief Green, you're telling us that's not a good option?
One chief with 2 departments is not a good option? Why?
That's what we just, that's
Why
what
don't
we
each
Yeah,
of
just
the
I know.
talked
chiefs,
about, right?
why don't each of the chiefs give us 2 ideas of what you think would make this work?
A fire district.
Off the top of your head, I mean,
Well,
just 2 different ideas.
Let's take that one off the board, because Dan, you're shaking your head.
What's that?
Yeah, one chief, two, so we take that one off the board, okay? Fire district is still an option,
Yeah.
and is disbanding an option?
Okay, so let's step out of what we want
Yeah,
and look at the big picture.
right, which takes us back to the mission statement,
Yeah.
okay? And that's what we're here
Disbanding
for.
option?
Yep.
Without using any expletives I'm gonna get in trouble for? No.
Okay.
Oh.
Hey, everybody, council members, do you all feel the same? Township trustees?
About what?
Disbanding the
the living together arrangement or moving forward to a fire district. So you just
We
say.
are one community. I mean, Canal Fulton, Lawrence Township are one community. The people in Lawrence Township look at themselves as members of Canal Fulton, whether their address is inside the city limits or not.
Correct.
We need to stop pretending like they're two totally different enterprises at this point.
So what's gonna
No,
work
this
the
man
best
is
for
not
the
at
fire department?
Okay, so we're all in agreement, we're gonna take this banding off the shelf?
Please.
Okay. All right, we're here to get something accomplished. So we got two options, status quo with adjustments or a fire district, okay? So obviously, if we did status quo with adjustments, we'd put you two in a room or you four in a room and tell you to come out when you play nice in the sandbox. But
What would
part
be
of
some of
that
the
problem.
adjustments? What would be some of the adjustments that?
Well, hold on a second, because what we have to understand is some of those adjustments are beyond their control, which is money.
Yep.
Yeah, so they can walk out of the room and agree all they want, but we're gonna come back to money. And they have more money than we do. So go ahead, you're right, Eric, let's,
But no, I mean, if we're gonna keep status quo with adjustments on the table, let's hear what some of those adjustments would be to make this cohesive. That's
Equal pay.
okay.
we're not gonna make,
I mean, I wanna
we're
hear
not
the
gonna make
ideas.
Dan write them down on the board, equal pay?
I can't, how do you ask these people to come work for Lawrence Township when they're making a higher wage, and then we want them to come in and work for Canal Fulton, do the exact same job, making less money?
Yeah.
Historically, for people that respond on callbacks for fires or additional alarms and things like that, or they can come in for training, we've split the cost of that between both departments. Now, who gets to pick and choose and decide which one's gonna be making the $20 an hour and which one's gonna make the $15 an hour?
Okay.
I don't wanna be part of that position.
And there's a lot of, detail involved here with understanding, it's our station, our taxpayers paying $117,000 a year to pay off this building, okay?
Who's
So-
trying to get to the meat and potatoes
Yeah,
between?
well, and that's what I'm saying, it's coming down to money, it always does. So what else would you need to make this work with adjustments? So we keep the living together arrangement, living in sin. So, or what other adjustments would you have us do? Would equal pay solve a whole lot of problems?
Yeah, that would be the biggest thing.
Okay?
Chief
Would-
Stewart said earlier, consistency, we just need to pull together, be more consistent
Okay.
across the board.
Here's my question to you, would you reel back some of your raises so that we could pay you what we could afford?
We're not gonna reach that objective by doing that.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want equal pay, we can go, what was your average, Scott, 16 something an hour? 16.89, I think, when we had the council meeting?
Yeah, it was 1680
Yeah.
something, I think.
Yeah.
Is that solving our end game problem?
Yeah, whose average is that? I mean,
I don't know.
does that
it's
get
just
people to come to
something
work?
I mean, we're
When you can
trying
make
to.
$18 at the
That
ER,
was an
that
average
doesn't.
of several area departments.
Okay, but we're looking beyond that.
That
because
wasn't my average, because my average, when I surveyed everyone where else they were working, the average for a medic at all the other places they're working is $19.10 an hour.
So
That's
that
the average.
That's the average.
So that's where that number came from, up there, I saw that 1910.
Correct,
But does that include where they're working at full time?
Yes, everything,
Well,
That's
I
everything.
mean, we can't,
that's everything.
Yeah, and
let's
that's
not look at
what,
what a full-time firefighter's making.
But that's not that number. I am a full-time fire department personnel, and that's not that number.
because of benefits.
No, it's not that number per hour. If you add my benefits into it, you got a much bigger number than $19.
Right, and that's what I just said, it's because it's not that number because of benefits, but when you did the numbers, Dan, you were collecting data based on their hourly rate.
I collected, anonymous data, I put out a survey, and this is all the data that I got back. I didn't omit anything, I didn't make up anything, this is what I got back.
Joe,
Survey.
go ahead, Mike, you come around
One
money.
department.
Hold on, we're getting too many conversations, so Mike, I wanna hear it.
I say you're coming around the money, which eventually.
It always
I
does.
figured we get there.
Yeah.
I don't know how you folks come up with the amount of money that you put into your fire business. We are levied, so we know what we put in. Now, there's grants here and there's some other ancillaries that come in.
Right.
But we know how much money, or approximately, what we're gonna have coming in and what we can spend.
Right.
How do you folks come up, where's your money?
We get it from income tax, Mike, and this is one of the arguments I've had for a long time. The difference in how these are supported financially, and Mr. Rouse can, and Cindy can tell you, when you have millage, if someone loses their job and they get their house foreclosed on, ultimately, you're still gonna get your money. When they live in the city and they lose their job, we lose their income. You know, so we base our budget on income based on people's income tax. And right now, the economy is humming along at 4% unemployment. So things look really good. But when we went through 2008, 2009, the recession, you know, our revenues went way down, where you still got to collect the same amount of money. And that's what millage does.
Well, that's not true.
That's not true?
We
Okay,
got
educate me.
property valuation, and then.
Yeah.
Governor, the one before, this time rolled back the local government funding.
Yeah,
So-
we got hit the same way.
20-some%, give or take, whoever you talk to,
Yeah.
14 to 29% yet. So it's more consistent with yours.
Yeah.
But that said, you just hit on something that you're rolling along pretty good right now. The economy's good. I listen, the economy's good, right?
Right, but you can't
Well,
start.
no, let me
Okay.
finish.
Yeah.
So, you've got more money coming in than you had 2 or 3 years ago.
Not necessarily.
Oh, you don't?
There's our finance director.
Income tax, in 2017, income tax declined maybe 2-3% from the year before. Last year it was up 1%. The problem was the state came along and changed all the income tax codes for every municipality, and in so doing it hurt us. And so, just like the state takes away local government funding, estate taxes, and all the other initiatives, we were penalized through their income tax revision.
Okay.
And the
Now,
other thing
out of that pie, then how do you decide out of that pie what the police department gets, what the fire department gets? You all made that decision, right? Based on his?
Yes.
We take our 2.7 million that we collect in the general fund, and we go and we allocate however much is needed to make our debt payments. That's the first thing that gets funded. Then we go through and we look at, okay, here's the police department, here's how much they're gonna bring in, and whatever they don't bring in, we send enough from the general fund to make them whole, to balance their budget. Then we go to the fire department, we look at what the EMS revenue is, and whatever's the difference, we send that amount from the general fund over to make them whole. Then we go through the rest of our departments and we do that. And whatever's left, that's what we have to spend on all of our road improvements, equipment, and so on and so forth. In the last couple years, because of the declining income tax we've had, after we balance every budget, we have about $200,000 to $300,000 to do all our road maintenance, to buy police cruisers and what have you, and that number continues to decline. And what we've had to do is just make tough choices in the last couple of years to essentially not give away that entire amount, because we have to be able to do some improvements in the city. We have to be able to do some road repairs. We have to be able to buy at least one cruiser or things of that nature. So that's become increasingly tough. So any wage increase beyond the 2% we've budgeted for fire or for the rest of the city has to come out of that $200,000 to $300,000 that we have available for capital. That is the only money we have right now that is unaccounted for by personnel or debt payments, or we're just maintaining operations. And that's my fear, is if we go beyond if we were to go and adopt your wage plan right now, I calculated it would cost us somewhere between around 60 to 70 grand based on what we had, our schedules, our hours worked and stuff. I might be high, I'm not sure. But, you know, that takes our 200,000 and almost cuts it in half. And so then there's roads that don't get patched or paved, or there's a police officer that has to be laid off, or something's gotta give, and we just don't have the revenue growth at this moment to cover it.
Aren't you glad I had him stay?
No, that's fine.
And the other thing that happens, Mike.
That was my drop the mic moment.
And here goes on, you're hitting on where I'm getting at, then you make the decision at the end with that 200,000, where it goes.
Council decides, and it takes us 3 meetings to.
That's all I
Council
need to
decides
know.
based on the recommendation of the administration.
And who's the administration?
Me, Bill,
And the
Mr.
city
Cozy.
manager.
Okay.
Yeah.
I take their recommendation and vote.
Yeah, and then, okay, very good.
Yeah, and the other thing that Bill didn't mention is Mike, retirees. So when we see the economy humming along, I was employed at the school district paying 2% of that salary. Now when I retire, and that's what we have in Canal Fulton, is a lot of retirees. We don't tax their pensions. So that's a loss of revenue, even though, the economy's doing good, people are working. You look at the percentage of retirees in Canal Fulton, in and around Canal Fulton, I guess it's only in for us tax-wise. So that has an impact on it too. So
He guided me where I needed to
yeah,
go.
yeah. You heard what you wanted to hear?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So with that being said, like I said, we just can't afford that kind of raise for our fire department. And, it would have been nice to have this conversation before, but we are where we're at. Brought a lot of attention to it. And for me, I still go back to what's on the table. So we've got status quo with adjustments or fire district. And obviously, to answer your number one solution was equal pay. And that's probably just not realistic for us. So
It is if we go to a fire district.
well, and then you're getting into a lot of these other things, because I wish we would have started out here, but it was good to hear everything. So, we gotta decide, it's 8 o'clock. I'll go another hour, but, for me, a fire district is a good solution. I love the thought. The control of the board, and we have Mr. Matthews here, I would like to see it so that we each had one member. The city gets one vote, the township gets one vote, and the only way anything can change is if those two entities agree. We need a fiscal officer to run the district. Don't want to recommend anybody, but some people with a lot of expertise here at the table. So is that legal? The way I understand it, it is, because the law says that.
You just structure it under the code and have the appropriate number of members.
Yeah.
I don't think the physical or mechanical organization of the district is going to be any dilemma for you.
Okay.
It's the substance of the terms.
Yeah, and for us, Mark, and this is where you guys come in. So a fire district gives us one department.
Yep.
It gives us one leader. So when you look at this 18-year-old issue, that's a prime example of how it would have been resolved. Because we follow the recommendations of our chiefs, just like the township does. That's what we did, and we're here to support you to provide the best services we can to our citizens. And you had two different ideas. Now, in a fire district, chances are the board's not going to hear that, because you're going to have one chief, and the chief's going to bring that recommendation to the board. And so it's so the possibility of discord, I think, lessens, because you have one chief. So, but even if you didn't, if that issue came up where the chief was recommending it, and Mr. Schwab is against it. And the way I would see it is the representative from the city is a board member, the representative from the township is board member. The recommendation comes from the chief to say, hey, I want to employ 18-year-olds. As a board person, goes back to council, here's the arguments from council, and council says, no, I don't want to do it. Or council says, yeah, let's do it. And it comes back to the trustees, and the trustees debate it and say, no, I don't want to do it. Then it's status quo, it stays as is, and that's the way the department is operating. Am I making sense to you?
I have never heard it put like that before. I have never heard of having a fire district with, I have heard of having a fire district with 2 members that lasted about 6 months, and then they hired a 3rd member.
Yeah.
Because nothing gets done.
Yeah. Well,
you gotta have that odd number.
Boy, I don't think, that's where I'd be opposed to, because I don't want to get outvoted. If you have.
That's the
Yeah, because that's what would happen, Mike. They would give me my marching orders. They would tell me how to come back and vote on the board. Okay? Just like the trustee board would give whoever your representative is.
But if you're on the board as the mayor,
yep,
and these 6 individuals are gonna make a decision, you're still the tiebreaker.
Exactly.
That's exactly what.
No, not if they make a decision and it's 4-2.
But
I don't.
if it's a tie,
if it's 3-3, right? It's a tie.
So that's not gonna work.
The whole purpose for a charter.
What? And I
And
still
I
don't
get
wanna
it.
have one of the elected officials on the board. I still find it difficult. I mean, you guys, we've talked about serving 2 masters or whatever. I feel like that's what we would be doing. Are we looking out for the best interests of the fire district, or are we looking out for the interests of the people who elected us in the first place? I don't wanna be put in that position. If there's ever something that comes up that could be conflicting between the 2, I think we appoint somebody. The city gets to appoint somebody, the township gets to appoint somebody, and then they come together and appoint a 3rd person, because I agree that it should be an odd number.
so in the model that we had set up, 3, 5, or 7 members, that it was made up of the elected officials for, if, say you do a 3-person board, 1 person from Canal Fulton, 1 person from Lawrence Township. For the first 2 years, there's a resident from Lawrence Township that is on that board. For the next 2 years, there's a resident from Canal Fulton on that board. That's the position that changes. And then as, you know, say it's a member of the safety committee, if they want to elect that person who a member, since there 4 people on the health safety committee. So if you guys vote to put 1 person this year, you're going to be on the board. For the trustees, we have a fire liaison. That person would be our representative to the board. That odd person out, which is voted on by the folks that are, you know, if let's just say it's the year for Canal Fulton to have their city member, a resident on the board, you all pick that person.
Yeah.
So you guys put that person in play. If it's
Right.
a Lawrence Township.
So let's put another option on the board, because we took off status quo. We had status quo with adjustment and fire district. So with your principle, Dan, you want to wash your hands of it, then let's look at outsourcing, which is what some communities have done, is they've outsourced their service. Because when you're giving me those examples of other areas and that's what they've done, correct? They've outsourced services?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Yeah, what are you saying?
Like,
I don't understand.
I didn't give you any examples of that.
well,
You're talking about contracting another
Yeah.
fire department to come in here and do this?
or contracting a private service. Who's Jake Morton working
Have
for?
another drink.
I don't think that's where
Well,
That one won't
No,
be charged.
That's not what he was going after
No.
at all.
Okay.
He was,
Well, no, I'm just saying, it's another option.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying I like the district, I just don't like the composition of the board. I would never want to serve on that board, personally, because I feel like it's a conflict of interest.
Can
Even
I
if
ask a
our-
question? What's the difference between 1 chief with a fire district and 1 chief with the way it is? What,
Answering to 2 boards.
you're answering to a board instead of,
No, you're answering to the board of trustees, you'd be answering to the board.
You have
of
2
trustees,
bosses.
And then the mayor.
There's a separate board for fire.
so the township trustees and the city council would be,
No,
fire chief would answer to
To-
the township trustees on the township side and to the mayor on the city side.
The people that are on the district board. You're
If there's a
talking about the
district-
district board,
No,
No.
no?
If you said, your first example was one chief with two departments. And what they're saying is bad about one chief and two departments is you have,
Oh.
the chief has two masters.
Okay, okay,
Now,
so,
if you have a fire district, you have a board, which Dan's talking about, you have a chief
Right,
that
okay.
is employed by that fire district.
okay,
So,
okay. Now, what would the cost of a fire district, what would we have to tax the residents for a fire district?
And the same amount of money that you're paying now.
So that would be, so how would that work with our finances in our budget, and you're paid with levy money, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
we'd have
ours
to
is
get back
nickel
millage,
tax.
and then we'd have to start, it would have to be put on a ballot, and it'd have to be
And-
paid that way.
and-
Yeah,
And we would no longer have to subsidize the fire department?
Right.
Right.
Basically, it's turned over to millage, just like what they're doing now. Citizens pay millage.
So our 500 grand and whatever theirs is that would be the total amount of millage that they would need to run a fire district?
Well, they would be okay with, Mr. Matthews can probably help us out more here at this point.
You can structure it with payments, contractual payments to begin with. A fire district doesn't have to operate on a levy, I'm just assuming you would want to, if you can get it passed.
To get it started, Sue, we would have to commit the amount of money is what Mark's saying, that we're paying now, we'd have to commit that. And
What we're paying
we'd have
now,
to commit more than that.
but what we're
We-
paying
to
now out of
match
the income tax that we
requirements
are.
that you're looking for as far as pay scale.
Hang on, we would look at what our total budget is.
Right.
That total budget would be dispersed amongst the 13,000 plus residents. So, you know, one side might go up a little bit, one side might go down a little bit, but we're still talking about the same amount of money. We're still talking about the same amount of money.
not necessarily, because we have a $117,000 debt payment on the building. So that's another, thing that has to be factored in. And
Right, and we've talked about that in the earlier models, that was not factored in. And it, you know, there's not a reason that it can't be, but there's also, you know, a mindset that, the township has a building up on Strasser Road that's $972,000 that's already involved in this, that no one paid for except township residents. So I'm not saying that I would not entertain the thought of that, you know, if the fire district has to pay that payment, make up rent, do whatever they gotta do to the fire district, then yeah, you're probably looking at a little bit more money, but it's kind of a wash type thing there, where that money's going right back into the residents that, you know, it's paying off that debt.
Right, but that's, as long as we're getting that revenue to offset what we're paying, $117,000, then, yeah, we can contribute that to the budget of the fire district. But to start off with, that's what we have to factor in is, right at square one, we can't contribute as much money as you're contributing right now.
Are you willing to go into a fire district?
My issue is still around the structure of the fire district. I really believe in two people. I believe that two people can get along and make the best decision based on.
What if they disagree?
But here,
What if, then everything stays the way it is. You just have status quo. You have two elected officials.
Nothing's gonna ever change, maybe it
Listen,
needs to.
Well, here's a good example where we're sitting here, they gave 35% raises and we can't afford to do that. So if you're in a fire district and you have complete autonomy, we both have the same control on that board. If one says no, the other one, the answer's no. And I think that's a great model. I just really do.
I think you gotta have an odd number, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and right away,
I'm glad it's left
and
to the council members to make that decision and the trustees. That's what I'm glad of, is that there is not one person that makes that decision here. This is local
look at
government.
the structure of the township trustees, Mark. You've got
Yeah.
three people.
Right?
And
if two people don't wanna do it, it ain't gonna happen. It doesn't matter what the third person thinks, it's just not gonna happen. So you might as well have two people on council.
But you have the same setup. Yeah, I mean, you have.
And that's what I'm saying
four
is,
that don't wanna do it.
and I'm touching these two guys because they're next to me, but it can be any two of them. Two people run the township.
But you have to
Because two
trust
people agree, that's the way it is. It
You
doesn't
have to
matter
trust
what
in
Les
your elected
says.
officials to do the right thing, Mayor. You have to
And
trust that
that's-
the people that you're electing on that three-person board are going to work together to do what's right all the time. And that's what our residents did for you folks. They took their time to vote for you because they trust you to do the right thing. It's not the fact that we can't go out and I can't pick my neighbor and bring him up here and say, you know what, because you didn't get elected, you can't be on this board because you're just a regular citizen. That doesn't exist.
So I'll talk to Dan about this one. So Dan, what you're looking at there is, you know, you wanna create this and you don't feel like, you feel like it's a conflict of interest. And what we're looking at here is, this is what we would be stuck with. In a fire district, when two members vote one way to give 35% raises, or everyone's stuck with it. That's the way it is. And the city, whoever that odd person is, because Mark's motto has, here's a township person, here's a city person, and here's one that flip-flop back and forth. So in a year when it's either township or city, whatever that third person wants to do is what everybody's gonna live with. And that's what my concern is that. Go ahead.
Okay, there's only one thing to that. They can only live within what they have. People can turn down a levy and they're not going there.
They can turn down a levy.
No, they couldn't get 35% if the money wasn't there. In other words, the fire district, whoever the head of the fire district, that three-person board, say they voted to give 100% raises, they'd be cutting their throats. Nobody's gonna vote for it. So there is a checks and balance.
So you're saying that your residents knew what you were gonna spend that money on and what kind of raises people were gonna get before they voted for it?
For
When you passed your levy, you told them, what did you tell them? It was for raises for fire and, I'm not sure, operation?
And, you know, you can hammer that one, and cut that pie a lot of different ways, Joe.
Yeah.
We're where we're at, we made a decision, we're gonna review it, and I'm comfortable with that decision. Now, your affordability, that's why I was listening to the finance man.
Yep.
He laid it out. Doesn't necessarily mean I don't think you can't come up with money. I'm just telling you where I'm at. I'm telling you where I'm at.
Right.
But that's my opinion.
Yeah.
So, that said, the fire district idea, you gotta have an odd number. And whether it's 3 or it's 5, you need that tiebreaker, you gotta have an odd number. Yeah, if two people go one way, but as Stuart said, we're elected to make calls, we're elected to lead, we're elected to make decisions. And that's why this one, you know, with the raises, okay, it didn't sit well with you folks, and I can appreciate that. There were some examples given, there's a shame on you, and a shame on us, and a shame on you back. But we're monitoring this, and as these gentlemen eloquently put out, what your own department keeps coming back to is, yes, money is an issue. And what would resolve the issue? Equal pay. Well, we took a leap of faith, and that's what we did. So if we're to be damned for it, okay, but I'm comfortable with where we're at. We're gonna look at it quarterly, halfway through, and at the end of the year and see. No intention to purposely put anybody in a bind.
Well, it sure did, I'll
But,
tell you that much.
that, you know, that's math. You're a math major.
No, I was an elementary major.
Whatever. But, you're on the fire district, and, you know, Booker said he doesn't, you know, he feels it's conflict of interest, and, you know, I've been at this a long time, and I know we have worked through a lot of stuff. There has been more of a changeover of faces in your community than there have been out where I'm at. Doesn't make it bad or whatever. Consistency. I guess when we had the H&H gentleman, why there was some consistency. And that's okay. I think we still have it now with the guys I work with. None of us are rubber stamps, and we agree to disagree and so on. But rest assured, we felt that we made the best decision for our community as a whole, you folks included. So it brought us here, you asked, I think, about, well, the equal pay keeps coming up.
Yeah.
And how do you resolve it in Stewart said fire district? If there's no other way that you folks can come to resolve it, I guess we'll hear from you, as far as raising go.
But, I don't wanna go away from this on a negative tone from the fire district, because we have worked on this for so many stinking years. And we've had this thing settled in 2004, and then it got reversed, and then we got back on the bandwagon in 2009. And we've just been spinning our wheels ever since then. And then we moved into, the living together agreement, which we were hopeful that at the end of that 1 year, we were gonna prove that we didn't kill each other in the firehouse, because that's what Mrs. Zahirsky was pushing us to do. If you can live together in the firehouse and not kill each other, we'll sit and talk about a fire district. Well, we're all still here, and we haven't had this good conversation other than to get right to this point about what the size of this board is. I don't care if it's a 3, 5, 7, 13, I don't care how many people are on the board. The fire district is the way to make this better. The fire district has been the plan A from day one. The fire district is what is best for both communities. Trust me, we have done studies. He wrote a huge paper on how it affects our community. We had an ad hoc committee that was put together that was made up of elected officials and made up of residents. I have a copy of it.
We got it, Mark, we got it.
But
we're trying to move forward here, brother, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm trying to get to where you wanna go, and I've heard it all before, we've all heard it before. The question is,
Maybe not
Brad would get off the pot.
That's been part of the
okay,
problem.
so here we are.
The same players have been involved.
Exactly.
That's not.
It's always gonna change,
It's been a
Mike.
changeover.
Yeah.
I'm the only
Why
same
is there
player.
not a fire district? Why have we, it has
Mr.
come to
Mayor,
that?
why isn't there a fire district?
Right, I
Why
would
has
say,
it gotten turned down? Why does it?
Yeah, why is it?
it's a matter of losing control, okay?
Okay, so what's more important, control or the fire department
What-
doing
What's
their
more
job
important
that
than
they
losing
do?
control of your checkbook?
Okay.
And so that's where it comes down to, and this is a
Or
great
saving
example.
lives and
But
doing
so
what
we're
you're
being
trying to do.
forced into 35% raises, and I'm sorry, Mike, you're getting tired of hearing that, but that's what it is. And so if you form a fire district, this is what you may get. You may get another body,
But it wouldn't
another
come out of
political
our money,
entity.
Don't they have their separate? It is its own political entity.
It is.
It is.
It is, and that's
It
what you
is.
need to understand. It's their own political entity.
Right.
They can levy taxes, and when Dan talks about a conflict of interest.
Doesn't mean it's gonna
that's-
pass, but
well,
they can
no,
levy it.
that's why none of you can be on the school board of education, I believe. Is that right, Mr. Matthews? You can't. I
Confused here, by the way.
I woke you up. You were sleeping down there.
Well, I was looking at you're discussing a joint fire district, and you don't have to recreate any of this stuff. No. There are so many examples out there. I don't know who has been here to talk to you about existing examples.
Chip Comstock and
Chip would know a lot of them, there's no doubt about it. My favorite one, which I was just looking at, is the Cardinal Joint Fire District. I would think that's the closest to you in terms of comparison. It's the city of Canfield and Canfield Township. And the city of Canfield and Canfield Township are constantly battling over annexations. We did recently work out a JED agreement to try and cut some of that down. They're constantly battling about their little community square and who really owns it, who's gonna run it, and who's gonna authorize alcohol to be there and all this. So there's a lot that they are combative about, but when it comes to the fire service, they run the Cardinal Joint Fire District, and it works very well.
Do you need to
And I
have
was
a
primarily
JED
looking
agreement
at-
before you have a fire district?
I'm sorry.
Do you need a JED agreement
Oh,
before
no,
a fire district?
No,
Okay.
totally separate.
The thing is,
I was just trying to point out that, you have your annexation battles here, you have some issues between your communities, but yet you really are combined, I get that. I don't think a lot of this, if you're serious about a joint fire district, a lot of this doesn't need to be redone, okay? Follow the models that work and apply it here, if you're serious about it.
I'm dead serious about it.
Well, that's the model.
Cardinal operates with a 5-member board. So
That's
I
the
was
model
interested in their
that's the
composition.
model that's been applied.
That's
Oh,
the,
okay.
that's the one that Chip Cox.
Is that
pretty
right?
much-
Chip
that's
was
pretty
looking
much
at
it.
Good, then
all that
that's,
stuff.
then I'm reinforcing what Chip has apparently already told me.
And I will tell you this, the stumbling block in that model is this building.
And I
That's
figured
the
it
only
was.
thing I saw is the building,
Figured it was.
and that's a stumbling block. And
That's-
rightfully so, but it is.
That's why I commented, it's the substantive terms.
Devil's in
There's
the
literally
details.
no point in you
Now,
spending
he
any
brought up
more
numbers
time.
of a board, which wasn't.
2-member, 3-member,
So-
there's literally no point in you doing it until you were able to look at the substantive terms on financing the structure. And I know the debt service out there is gonna be the biggest obstacle.
I just wanna ask, I just wanna run this out here. Our residents right now pay 1.5% income tax.
Right.
Our fire department budget for everything comes out of our general fund, which is part of, which, that money comes in through a 1.5% tax.
And it also comes in from revenue
Plus
from.
your EMS bill.
Yeah.
What?
Plus your EMS bill.
All right, and plus that, okay. So, we are contemplating, well, we are gonna put on the ballot for the people a 2% increase with a 1%, 100% credit. Now, we're going to go to 2% on our taxes, our income tax. If we went to a fire district, what percent of that, of our income tax would then have to go towards funding the fire district?
It's gonna be a separate levy that would have to be put on there.
So what do we do with our 2%
We
income
basically
tax?
gotta give a portion of that back.
Well-
That's covering fire.
Well,
We passed a
are we gonna do
resolution.
that?
You
Are we
passed a
gonna
re-
do that?
You
I
passed a
don't know,
resolution.
See,
that's
that's-
something that have to be done though.
Well, okay.
You don't
but-
have time to do that, Sue. You passed a resolution and amendment
No, I'm
tonight.
not talking about that.
But you're talking about committing funds from changing our income tax reform.
Well, I'm
And so this isn't-
talking committing funds from our general fund, period, whether we were going up to the 2% or not. I'm just
Okay, so
saying,
then don't talk about income tax reform, talk about committing money from our general revenue, general fund,
But-
right, Scott? So that's what we need to work from. We can't work on hypotheticals if the income tax reform passes, or, so we need to
well,
focus on.
that doesn't even matter. I mean, if
Okay.
it does or
But
it
that's-
doesn't, but we still, if we're gonna be no longer funding the fire department with our income tax,
Right, and that would be a transitional
That's something
period
that
where you would.
we need to explain and talk
You
about.
can still structure where you're making contractual payments
Right,
as part of the service.
until a levy's passed.
Temporarily or a longer period. And I would think, you're probably not gonna like to hear this, but I would think part of that contractual payment would be handling the debt service for the fire district.
Yeah, and then
I
the
don't
issue
know
is.
how long you'd have to carry it.
Well,
You'd have to carry it.
we have 7 years to go, okay? And the issue for us is we own the building at the end of that period. Just like Mark talked about, the township owns their building, we would own this building. I think it's just too
I
complicated.
don't know the
Why can't it
respective
be a
values,
rental?
and I don't know.
Oh, it can be a rental, okay? We own the building, the district rents it from us. Okay?
And we still maintain it?
No, they maintain it,
They
the
maintain it?
district maintains
The
it.
district maintains it?
Right, all we have to do is make sure that at the end of the day, the citizens of Canal Fulton pay for this building. It's connected to the police station, it's almost impossible to separate. So from that standpoint, you're right.
City owned.
It's always gonna be city owned, we're gonna have maintenance agreements and, things like that. But you're right, Mr. Matthews, that's why I say that, 117,000.
Mr. Comstock said, in the past, he has said that if you could put that in the contract, that the city owns the building, they pay rent for it, and they are responsible for all maintenance, roof, heaters, carpet, doors, light bulbs.
Yeah, I think that's a
put that
conversation
in
that
the
we could
contract.
have once we get to that point. I mean, we're not there yet.
Well, where are we?
I actually think we've been there quite a few times.
Yeah, and that's where,
Right.
and that's where I'm gonna call you all on the table, and I'm sorry if you don't have enough information, but, and that's why this keeps changing, and it's so hard to finish, because they have consistency, pretty much of 3 people have been through this countless
But
times.
you can't force you can't force new people to be up on speed. You can't do that to them.
Right.
I'm sorry, you
And
can't
I
do
guess
that.
the question is, then,
You can't do that.
okay.
Can I bring some up?
In the mission
I'm not trying to, you know, but you can't do that. You can't say, well, you know, it's just too bad. You've
No,
only
I'm
been here
not
for
saying
a
it's
year.
bad, do you have enough
Hit that part,
information
yeah.
to move forward on a fire district based on being here? Are you committed to moving forward to negotiate terms of a fire district? That's-
I'm not ready, I'm just trying to digest what we just talked about now. There's two things that I'm thinking about, is the two things that you left on the table, fire district, and then, what we're doing now with adjustments.
Okay, and
Right now-
outsourcing.
And right now, not knowing exactly what kind of funds we can cough up to match, you know, what you guys are doing for your people here, not knowing what we could, if we can get close, I don't know. That's gonna be a conversation that we're just gonna have to determine what we
Absolutely.
can do here, so.
And that's, if I can bring, in this mission statement, it talks about being fiscally responsible. You go upstairs in the apparatus bay, there's 3 fire engines, 3 ambulances, a grass fire truck. You know, at the Strasser station, 2 more fire engines, another ambulance, 2 SUVs, a grass fire truck. Operationally, we are wasting money because we have, not being a district and not operating as one, we still have to maintain our separate specialty equipment and stuff. If we ever did disband, you know, they have to have an engine and a tanker, we have to have 2 engines to keep our ISO rating, 2 ambulances to cover our call volume, they have to have 2 ambulances to cover their call volume. We both gotta have grass fire trucks for the 2 grass fires that we go on a year. We have 3 sets of jaws. 4 cardiac monitors that we're paying service contracts on. 5, okay, I stand corrected, 6, actually.
6.
Yeah, 6. So operationally, we're wasting money. If we were a district, we could trim the equipment that we have, reduce the amount of stuff that we have, and then have decent modern stuff to operate with.
Amen. Well said.
I'll just leave it at that.
All right, so if we're gonna walk out of here, I think this is the only way to have the meetings, when everybody's expected to be here, you know? So if we schedule another meeting, I sure would like to schedule
Before
another
we
meeting.
leave, what's our next step in pursuing a joint fire district?
You guys vote right now, form Northwest Fire District.
I'll second that.
Instead of waiting another 4 years or 2 years for this to happen, what do we need to do next to make this? What do we need to look at? I mean,
So if you're comfortable, Eric, are you comfortable voting tonight?
We can't vote on anything tonight. This is a work session.
It's not even on there.
It's a special council
There's
meeting, we
nothing
can
here.
vote, they didn't vote.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
right, okay,
yeah,
never
right.
mind,
Yeah.
never mind.
We've been so close, and I think we're so close now. I'm right there with you. Financially, this is the best decision for both communities.
Absolutely.
So,
Let's figure out a way to make it happen.
Yes.
and Danny, you say you're not there yet,
I can't make a decision right now.
okay?
No, I'm not ready to make a decision right now.
Okay,
Said, I mean, Mike already brought up, we still got building stuff to think about, and I know there's a lot of good answers that I just heard tonight, but it still needs to be digested. You know, this is gonna have to be something that people are gonna have to make a decision on, we just gotta decide. Listen,
So you wanna push it on to the voters?
it has to be on.
It has to be put on the voters to fix the money, but you guys
fund
have to
it.
make the fire district.
Right, we have to create it, and then whether it gets.
Before we
Right.
go and ask for money. We
Right.
have to.
So, and that's what I'm looking for is, Sue, are you comfortable with putting terms together for a fire district to take to the voters?
As long as we have our ducks in a row regarding how we're gonna fund it.
Fund
And
it
we can tell them how it's gonna be funded.
Yeah, okay.
Our residents
Scott?
need to know that.
I need to know more.
Okay, Danny,
Yes, I am.
you ready to move forward? Eric, okay,
I have been from the beginning, yeah.
okay. How about our trustee neighbors?
Yeah, I've been here since 208.
You were ready then?
Well, we had that, year and a half study. We came back living together for 1 year, 2 years. Thinking at that time, that's pretty long to live with somebody.
Yeah, it's time to get married.
When you got all them people.
I'll buy the ring.
You know, Joe, before you finish, and this, I don't know if anybody else, some of you don't remember this, but we were told in the beginning by administration was that what was holding us back from a fire district, or from, what was keeping us from forming a fire district, or why we needed to form a fire district, excuse me, was because we needed to be able to jointly purchase equipment, and without having a fire district, you cannot jointly have a fire, you cannot, jointly purchase equipment, which is not true. I've proven that to them. Because I produced documentation from Concord Township and the city of Painesville that they mutually purchased a used ladder truck. And I had the legislation, I had the agreement, I had everything, and I passed it out. No one wanted to look at it, but we were being told, we weren't being told of anything going on with the consistency issues. We weren't told that stuff.
How many years ago was this?
14,
Okay.
2014.
I remember talking about it, and it was more of a benefit by going into a district to be able to have the ability to do that.
But we never heard of the inconsistencies and the discipline issues. We never heard.
No, this is something that these
This is
guys
all
discovered
new.
through this living together process here. And that's new.
But
That's all new to me.
And I haven't heard any of this
anything.
until just now,
Yeah.
really.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Sean, how do you feel?
You have a question in the back?
Let me get finished through this, Chuck, okay?
Yeah, put me on the spot.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's what I'm here
I
for.
too sat on the board, comprehensive study board back in 08, 09 era. My main concern is how we're gonna pay for it. You know, like Danny said, like everybody else said, the biggest hang-up's been this building. From day one that we were on that board, how is we gonna pay for the building? We got the building, we want the district to pay for it. Okay, I get that. You guys got a debt. But my one concern is I got people out in the township, this isn't their debt. That's been my stickler.
Right.
It's you guys' debt, not that I'm not all one community.
But you're using
But,
it.
but,
You're
yeah,
using
but, you guys pay different taxes than we do out in the township.
Right.
So we're asking the township people, but we gotta come to some happy medium.
Okay,
And I'm willing to listen,
okay,
but I'm not there yet until I see more.
okay. Michael, voice of wisdom, experience, a sage advice.
Well, you get the input from the vendor that afterwards happened, and they have been on a consistent, path that way that they are in favor of. It's the most expedited, financial, smart way to go, and the use of the assets we have. I voted for one fire district, so.
You haven't changed your mind?
And I have been convinced for a long time that that probably is the end result, it should be, to resolve and move ahead out of the living together. But, again, building, as Lockhart elaborated on, was a stickler, the way it was laid out in the original agreement and then tweaked a little bit. If that one can be resolved, in my mind, that everybody can hold hands on, then I think we have an opportunity, a chance. I will vote for it. But this facility here and the way it's to be financed and covered is the sticking point.
But don't we, right now, if you take your, what is it, 560,000, is that what you pay for the fire
I
department?
think so.
Yeah, and this is where we might need Bill, but I think I know where you're going, Les, go ahead,
And
because.
then you add your other 117,000, that's
Mhm.
about what we're putting in right now.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
there shouldn't be a problem with this building.
I don't see it either, and that's,
Huh?
It wasn't explained out that way.
No.
No, the
What I'm
district
saying
is paid for right out of the box.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna add one other thing too, Lester, if I may, and what Sue was talking about. We need to do and they have done this, a close analysis of what, after 1 year of operating in the same funding we have, and I use that year because I thought that was about the time we really discussed. Then a levy is going to need to be put in place, and at that point, what is that levy gonna cost people? Because there is gonna be an increase.
Yeah.
There is gonna be an increase, so, I mean, people need to be told and know that this is a movement that's going forward because, and it will cost a little bit more, but here's why we're entertaining it. As Green pointed out, wherever you got to, we're throwing money down the tubes with this equipment duplication and so on and so forth. So, I think that we need a good PR, game plan too, to explain to the people that, you know, this has not just been done overnight, but we still need a good PR.
One of the things I've heard people say is that this is probably the most financially, fiscally responsible thing to do is to save money. And we've been talking about it since 2004.
That's one thing they have been consistent on in my time with them. They have been.
They've been talking
They
about
have been
How much
consistent
money
on
have we
it.
wasted
All right.
since 2004?
I would, just like to, someone had a question, and we try to want to get out here by 9 o'clock, so I may cut you off.
So I'm gonna need to, leave here right now.
Okay.
I don't mind.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Chuck?
Is there any way we can make a joint motion tonight to set up another meeting since we're this close?
Yeah, that works for me. Danny, don't leave yet. You good for another meeting?
Set it up, I'll be there.
Okay. So, get your calendars out.
Can you, can Canal Fulton match our pay scale till we get through this? Get through, you know, we'll have meetings about fire districts, but can you match that pay scale so that the other guys can, for that short period?
And that's, boy,
Can't you do emergency legislation, Joseph?
you can do emergency anything you want, but that's the emergency major there. He doesn't like emergencies, so.
I'm
but-
just asking,
Yeah, I mean,
because that would be fair to the firemen.
as we move forward, I gotta tell you, that's a tough one, because I can't, that's a budgetary thing, and it goes into committee, and we gotta study. But, as far as making it happen that fast, I wouldn't think so. Nothing happens that fast. I don't know about your end, maybe you guys operate a little bit faster, but
No.
it takes us 8 weeks to.
All this stuff was hashed over for a couple months. Those decisions weren't just made overnight.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
I would say that if the employees can see that the elected officials are making an effort to make this situation better, they're good people too. Our employees are good people. They're not going to leave the community hanging, knowing that the elected officials are working towards this goal. You know, we've been put off so many times, it's got a hard taste on your tongue a little bit when you come and sit in this meeting and we talk about doing a fire district again.
Yeah. Mark, do we wanna go February 21st? That would give us a month to, try to throw some numbers together, Les?
I won't be.
You won't be here? Back it up, February 14th, Valentine's Day?
Trying to get us killed?
Yeah, how about a Wednesday night? Does that work for anybody? Not good? How about a Tuesday in between council meetings? That would be February 12th?
You need time to do a cost analysis, Joe.
Yeah, I think we beat this Andy thing.
You need to do a true cost analysis with the equipment, leases, and everything else. That's the only way you're really gonna get true numbers to make a true, honest decision. So try to push it for sooner, it's not gonna give you time to do a cost analysis.
Okay, with sage advice of Andy Janelle, thank you, sir. Do we wanna go February 28th?
I'll be home then, I think.
February 28th? February 28th? All right.
What day is that?
That's a Thursday, Mike.
That's the last day of the month.
We wanna meet here again? We wanna go to senior center, any place different, or is this good?
Oh, this is good.
Okay.
6 o'clock?
Next meeting, February 28th at 6 o'clock. Location here.
At 6 o'clock.
Yep.
Do we wanna make it another special council meeting? Is that how you want
Yes.
to set it up?
I think we have to.
Yes.
Alright, then I'll make a motion that we hold a special council meeting on February 28th at 6 p.m. to meet with the Lawrence Township administration to discuss a joint fire district.
Second.
Oh, okay, we've got a motion by Dan Booker Jr. Second by Scott Schwab. Any discussion? Roll call?
Bonnie Donaldson.
Yes.
Sue Mayberry.
Yes.
Eric Whittington.
Yes.
Dan Booker Jr.
Yes.
Danny LaChapelle. Scott Schwab.
Yes.
What was the time?
6 o'clock.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody. Motion to adjourn?
Oh, if I could, I've got, since this is all things fire department, I'd like to get a voice motion by council, because it's about 2 weeks to our next meeting, but we would like to have equipment installed on our truck, and we've got a PO that I've submitted to Bill Rouse for $7,750.
Is that coming out of your supplies, materials, or capital fund, or what?
Well, I talked to Bill that it would be coming out of our carryover.
Yeah. You can make it 6. A regular meeting.
Yeah.
Can you make a regular meeting?
We okay with that, Scott?
Yeah, let me see.
There will have to be legislation, I'm sure, to catch up with that. Thank
Who's they?
Thanks, Mike.
I mean, I'm just curious.
Hey, you gonna shake my hand or what? Huh? Come over here and shake my hand. Election year. Mr. Hill, thank you. Got your back there.
But it cost analysis is
Hey, they get some council through and pass, are they gonna give you guys the same benefits as they have? Departments? You gotta look at that. That's a big question right there.
Thank you. That's a good one. Thanks for coming. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
Eric Whitting, any discussion? Roll call.
Bonnie Johnson, Sue Mayberry, Eric Whittington, Dan Bush Jr., Scott Crosby.
Good job, Scott.
That's just not right now, I'm on a piece of paper. There's more detailed cost analysis. I mean,
And the other thing is, after this is I may be wrong, I don't know that big of what issue, I'll find out. And if we don't have it, then we just won't have a meeting.
I give you, sir.
I'm just trying to figure it out.
I know, all I said was the
Anybody on council is
Some renovations too. We'll be doing renovations to graduation event with Mayor Schultz and his wife. He was doing renovations to the library. You tell them, I'm gonna sell City Hall.
It's a possibility.
Why did you say that? You have that money already spent? Our revenue from the already spent. You know how I feel? I hear more than the than I can feel on city council. How can you have conversations and then Buck Chevrolet, where's the money gonna come from?
I guess from the city.
Okay.
I just.
And the whole block's gonna get sold out.
I don't wanna take any. What's that? You charge somebody to make a living, don't you? No.
You make a living some other way?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.